All right, we are live. Welcome to HUMANE Mind Live, episode 108. Trump gets impeached, sort of, because that's a very odd situation going on there. So the topics for this evening, we're going to talk about the vote to impeach and the ramifications of all that, what's going on with things, and things that go along those lines. There's also Fuentes was. I don't like talking about this guy, but he was making the rounds again for something, so I've got a video related to that. And then another topic is I got banned from Twitter for the stupidest reason. Like, of all the times I've gotten into arguments and discussions with other people, I picked the wrong group to go against, and I will explain what that means. Like,
Hmm.
so, yeah, no, it's not the communists. It's not Antifa. It's not the men's right activists. It's not like of all the groups that you could find. It's not Democrats or hardcore leftists. It's not feminists. It's well, I will explain. All right, and then Eddie Murphy was on SNL this weekend, and SNL was good.
Hmm.
Like, I don't understand. Like, there was a couple of skits that were kind of meh, but like that's if SNL was like that repeatedly, it'd be something I would tune into regularly. But it's not. It's like one joke that's kind of funny in an hour long SNL thing. Like his whole opening monologue was amazing. There's a couple of sketches, kind of throwback to because he hasn't been on the show in 30 years, so this is his
Yeah.
first time back in 30 years. Um, and it was a kind of a return to form. It's like that's the SNL that I grew up with, not just because Eddie Murphy was on it, because they were making skits and jokes that it wasn't. Yeah, there was the cold opening that was the based on the PBS. I guess I should sort of talk about that as well, but
Oh, yeah, I
yeah,
did see that.
yeah. So but that cold open was kind of meh. Like
It
so,
was
like I said, there was a couple of
previous
them that
thing, but
didn't make
okay.
me laugh, but like the throwback to Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood and Gumby showing up on the weekend update, and so it's a couple of classic throwbacks to Eddie Murphy, but then they also did a couple of other sketches like the holiday one where it's like that's SNL of old, where yes they are parodies, they're good, but I don't know. It seems like the SNL has gone. Yeah, I guess we'll talk about that when we're actually more on that subject later. I guess as that's the focus. And if we have time, we'll try to talk about the Communist Manifesto because we are on part 3, which is a fairly short section. I think it's like 5 pages ish. And then the last section of it is only like 1 page. So maybe we'll have time to get to all of that, but not sure. So first things first is the impeachment, and so I've got that video pulled up, or a video pulled up related to that, because this was when this is after they're announcing the results of the vote.
The yeas are 230, the nays are 197.
The audio is a little quiet at the beginning here. That's not me or my setup. That's
Article
the video itself.
1 is adopted. The question.
So the audio wasn't coming through clear for me there, but the reason she gives that that look, that like no you better not, is some of the Democrats started cheering as soon as she announced that the article was adopted and then hit her gavel. There were Democrats cheering, and she's like, "No, we're not supposed to cheer. We're not supposed to do that."
Yeah,
This is
they're
supposed to be a
supposed to be
somber thing. This is
solemn
supposed to be
and
something we're
somber.
doing regretfully. Like, oh, we because she was saying before, it's like, yeah, this is. I guess that's also a little later in this clip. I'll keep playing here.
The question. The question is on adoption of Article 2. The question is on the adoption of Article 2. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. As Speaker of the House, I solemnly and sadly open the debate on the impeachment of the President of the United States. If we do not act now, we would be derelict in our duty.
Yeah.
It is
So
tragic that the President's reckless actions make impeachment necessary. He gave us no choice.
So right there, yeah, she said, it's tragic. He gave us no choice. And then they go to the vote, and then Democrats are like, yay! It's like, whoa, that's not...
Yeah, they're acting like they won some kind of election, like this is a positive thing. Woo, got a president.
Yeah,
Or
president
they-
did something bad, and we get to get rid of him. What? That's not a cheer-worthy event. That's
Or is it solemn?
it's supposed to
Oh,
be
man,
solemn, but
Saw a, I guess it was a compilation of all the various DNC people saying that exact same phrase.
yeah,
These impeachment hearings. Everybody is, well, the solemn, I solemnly
yeah,
agree with it, blah, 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 solemn, like everybody is saying that.
yeah. It's a pattern, and I'm sure you can find bits and pieces of that when you go to Republicans or conservatives. But it's like with Democrats and leftist talking points, there are entire YouTube pages dedicated to montages of them repeating the exact same phrases. Like,
Oh, like parrots.
Yeah,
I even
yeah.
remember when I was a kid, well, maybe I was a teenager, but gravitas became a term that was used every other sentence. And I'm just like, no one has used that word until now, and now that's all you guys talk about.
yeah,
And you're talking about Obama's when he was first running for president, and how he used to show a lot of gravitas with his stance. And I'm just like, what? Nobody uses that word. Why is everyone now using that word? But
'cause that's
that was
the-
one extreme example, because that even in the news, everything that just
yeah.
you can turn anything without hearing somebody say that for no reason, and now nobody uses it again. It's disappeared. I haven't
Yeah.
heard it in years.
So in the lead up to the vote for impeachment, like when they were doing the hearings, originally it was quid pro quo, and they kept saying, "Oh, this is definitely quid pro quo," and quid pro quo became kind of the talking point. And then they said, "Oh, this is explosive." Like that was the current phrase, because like as I don't know if you've seen like the Freedom Tunes did a kind of montage of the walls are. I mean, not a montage necessarily, but they were making fun of how the walls are closing in, and there's montages online of them talking about for 2 years the walls are closing in on Trump. And I was like, for 2 years, they're the slowest moving walls ever. Or it's a really, really big room.
Yeah,
The walls are closing in for 2 years. But it's kind of one of those things. It's like you can see all these different networks using those exact phrases. And then when it came to the impeachment stuff and with the Ukraine, it's like, oh, we can't just keep saying the walls are closing in. So they started saying, oh, the bombshell explosion. And it all became...
bombshell picked up for a while there.
Yeah, and it was like 2 to 3 weeks of
That
just
was
everybody
when-
referring to it being some kind of explosion or some kind of... And it's like, okay.
But that's when nothing was happening. Like they
Yeah.
had those 4 constitutional experts,
Yeah.
and each testimony, except for the one that the Republicans asked to join,
Yeah.
the other 3 were all bombshell statements, but they said absolutely nothing.
Nothing. But except for the one lady who said, well, he can name his son Baron all he wants, but that doesn't make him a Baron. Oh.
That's not a bombshell. It's just a bad comment. Don't.
Yeah,
not
because
even a-
that's what Trump is trying to do. He's like, I'm going to ignore the Constitution. I know I'm only president, but I'm going to make my son Baron of the U.S. just because. When has he ever said anything like that? When has that ever been like, oh yeah, that's a platform I'm gonna run on. I'm gonna do away with the presidency and the executive office, and I'm just gonna start making the country a monarchy with barons. What?
So there's this horrible pattern with them where they're grasping at straws, but trying to paint it and put it out in the media as if this
Yeah.
is something really huge and negative.
Well,
So
yeah.
we went through Russiagate for like 2.5 years, but it turns out there was absolutely nothing. Now, if what they said did happen, yeah, then that'd be questionable activity. If he's working with the Russian government to overthrow opposition,
Yeah.
fine. I understand. That's not allowed. You don't do that. You don't tamper
Yep.
with U.S. elections. But none of that happened. It turned out to be practically the opposite,
Yeah.
where the DNC got a messed up dossier.
Mm-hmm. The
We
Christopher
still
Steele
have an
dossier.
ongoing investigation with what's Burr's man, what's that guy's
William
name?
Barr?
John?
No,
No, Bill Burr's
not Bill
oh
Burr.
yeah, Barr, sorry.
Barr.
Bill Barr. William Barr. He's got another guy working underneath Durham, is that his name? John Durham,
Yeah, that
who's
name. Oh,
the
yeah.
investigator.
Yeah.
So that's still kind of ongoing, but so far it looks like they contacted a dude from another country to dig up information on Trump. This dude gathered information from extremely unreliable or sources,
Yeah.
or basically known to put out false information.
Well, there's more information on that. So, like, the Christopher Steele dossier was proven to be, like, incorrect, although that was the basis for the FISA memo. And so the IG, Horowitz...
Well, I thought they also had statements where Christopher Steele said, here it is, but I don't
Yeah,
agree with
so even Christopher Steele doubted the validity of that document he had put
because he's
together.
just reporting on what he was
Yeah.
told, but doesn't agree
Yeah,
with it.
because it said in the document itself, some of that was overheard from other people over at a bar, and so some of it it was them making obvious jokes. But he included it all in the report and sent that over. And the FBI took that and ran with it, and then what Horowitz found out is that was the sole basis for the FISA memo, and that by itself is not enough for a FISA warrant. But
well, they also omitted the parts in the report that said this main is not firsthand. It's
because they admitted that information. They also changed documents. So one of the people, what was his name? Was it Page? I think it was Carter Page. I'm drawing a... Well, one of the people was working with Russians, but he was working with Russians on behalf of the state. Like, the FBI and CIA were using him as an intermediary. He was working with Russians and then reporting back to the CIA. The CIA knew this, and they told the FBI, and they're like, yeah, we're using him as an asset. The FBI, when they filed this is something that came out in the IG report recently. I think that IG report came out like last week or the week before, and it specified that on the documentation where it says whether this person was an intelligence asset or not, the person filling out the paperwork said no, even though they knew that this guy was working and was giving information on the Russians to the CIA. He was passing that along to the CIA. If that was checked yes, the FISA doesn't go through. Instead, it's checked no, knowing full well this guy's like, yeah, he's working with the Russians. He's doing it on our behalf. We asked him to do this.
He's working for us.
You can't be like, oh, this guy was working with the Russians. Oh, it must be some kind of collusion. You guys put him up to it. I was like, oh yeah, this is obviously something nefarious. Something underhanded is going on here. Let's start an investigation into him. Dude, I don't know.
That would be like the old Obama clip where he's sitting next to Putin.
Yeah.
You just put a big caption, collusion. Obviously, he's going to meet with the world leaders and people from other countries. That's the president's job.
Yeah. So Trump, that's the Ukraine thing. But yeah, going back, so what started the whole Russia investigation, the information that's come out on it now is like, yeah, and what is his name? Comey was trying to say, oh, yep, I guess I just had too much faith in the system. Oh, so cringy. No, you...
It would be like somebody getting a warrant to search a house because they heard a guy at a bar saying, man, I wouldn't be surprised if they're importing, selling drugs from that house. I don't like that neighbor.
Yeah. So
well, pop over here to get a warrant.
Yeah, so the basis of the warrant was a unreliable source. And it kept being passed around through the FBI as if it was reliable because they were omitting parts of it that pointed out that it wasn't reliable. They left out certain information that would have killed the investigation, to begin with. Because it's like, oh, okay, wait, never mind. This guy is on our side. He's reporting to us. We asked him to report to us. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't be working with the Russians at all if we didn't ask him to. Now, if we hadn't asked him to, and he was working with the Russians, and he was meeting with them, and we're like, oh, maybe something's going on there, maybe then that would warrant an investigation.
But, so back on the original topic with the whole Russiagate, this isn't necessarily new. This is stuff that has been questioned since it first came out. Everyone's like, where did this dossier come from?
Yeah.
And we found out it came from Steele and that the information is from foreign countries.
Yeah.
Which
and
is
it
kind
was
of
paid for
foreign influence.
Yeah. Paid for by Fusion GPS, which was hired by the Clinton campaign. So campaign funds used to pay a source to pay an intelligence agent who got his information from a foreign government. Or from foreign government officials. And it's like...
And then they had the Mueller hearing where he was supposed to be spying on stuff that was reported. And that was even asked, why is nobody investigating this Steele dossier? It doesn't add up. And he's like, well, that's outside my purview. I was investigating.
Outside his purview. He didn't even know... He didn't even seem to recognize the name Christopher Steele or Fusion GPS. Yeah.
So, no investigation as to why the investigation got started in the first place. They had no findings, no anything, and instead of saying, we're on a wild goose chase, how did this even happen? He's just like,
yeah,
it's out of my purview. And so we've been fighting to get an investigation, which is fortunately now that's happening with William Barr, and I think it's John Durham is the main investigator for that. So now we're starting to dig into, was there any viability to this at all, or were there just people within our government trying to pass stuff through for any reason? Trump.
Yeah, and so the Inspector General's report is confirming some of the stuff that Barr was looking into, and so I think they're going to start. They're going to be like, this. So they found. I don't remember the exact number, but it was. I think it was at least 17 violations of, procedural violations in the submitting and getting the FISA warrant. Is what was revealed in that IG report. It was 14 or 17. I can't remember which. But that's a lot of mistakes. And all of them... mistakes happen in filing paperwork, but all of them were necessary to get it passed through. All of them... It's not a mistake of, that's just kind of inconsequential. All of the mistakes were towards getting it through when it wouldn't otherwise get through. Like, how do you make that many... Right, it's that we've talked about that on the show before, or on the streams before. Is if you get all the questions wrong, right? It shows that you know the right answers. It's kind of like
you had to kind of try to get everything wrong.
Yeah, you. So yeah, obviously these documents were edited. Not like, that's just pure incompetence. It's like, well, if it's incompetence, why is it always one-sided? It's one-sided incompetence. It's incompetence to get this through when it wouldn't otherwise get through.
Or why was key information omitted that was just already in the Steele dossier, and they decided to not include that?
Yeah.
That intentionally means they knew that this would kind of discredit that report anyways.
Yeah.
But that being said, we have this pattern, and then now we get to, Ukraine Gate or whatever that's called.
Yep.
They're listening to Trump's phone call, and now all of a sudden you hear quid pro quo, and that's being thrown around everywhere. But that's not illegal. That's normal. That's normal international business.
Which,
I mean,
and the thing is
on camera stating exactly what they're trying to impeach Trump for, except for a much bigger dollar amount.
Yep.
Something that is questionable. Whereas Trump, now if Trump came out and said, "Can you check into Biden for me?" Just something like that. Obviously, where he's attacking.
Yeah.
But that's not the way the conversation went. In fact, that was like an afterthought at the end. It's just he heard that there was something odd about Burisma. and if he could look into that. But that was like after the fact of just asking for investigation into potential corruption.
Yeah. So that was one of the examples. Like, yeah, that seems like that's corruption that got sidelined in previous administrations. Is that something that you should be investigating? It sounds like it to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So-
we were originally just talking about these catchphrases. That
Yeah. So
keep getting
the
thrown
other
around.
so then quid pro quo, they had a meeting and they decided the term they should start using bribery. And so then all of them switched and all of them started, instead of quid pro quo, all of them started saying bribery. That was
There was no bribery.
Yeah, there was no bribery. That's why these articles that went through don't mention bribery at all.
Because
the articles,
that's quid pro quo. That's not anywhere in the phone call. That's not.
Yeah. So the two articles that they did pass, the first one was abuse of power. Okay, that would be a violation, although it's hard to say. It's hard to prove. Like, where is the abuse? The abuse only is proven if you've got
anything that would be considered an abuse of power.
Well,
they don't have it.
Anything that could be considered an abuse of power, depending on your perspective, and that's the problem with abuse of power. It's too vague of a term, but what he specifically did wouldn't even qualify as abuse of power unless you arbitrarily assume or reduce and say, oh no, this is the only possible reason he could have requested that was to influence the 2020 election. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's if you pretend that that's the only reason possible, that wouldn't hold up in court, though.
No, because if they pegged this on Trump, they would also have to go look at Biden's statement, because he literally came out on camera stating the exact same thing.
Yeah.
He's going to withhold funds unless this prosecutor gets fired, and they've got 6 hours. I mean, that's just right in your face.
Mm-hmm.
So if Trump's guilty of something, then why is Biden?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, please leave poor old Biden alone. Son's just trying to get a job. Blah blah.
Yeah. If Trump is guilty, Biden is more guilty.
Or don't.
Yeah. Then both of if that is an offense, that is against is a criminal, something criminal to investigate, then both of them should be under a criminal investigation.
And it would also mean that that's Obama's appointed man. How did none of that get reported back? Where Obama says, you know what, don't do that. Yeah, we can't have that in foreign relations. So
yeah, so abuse of power is too broad of a term, because there's lots of it depends on your perspective. Like, the Republicans are like nothing wrong, and the Democrats are like, oh no, he's trying to influence the election. And like, here's the thing: is they keep putting out the narrative that Trump asked. Is it Solkin? No, what's
Zelensky?
Zelensky, yeah. Asked Zelensky to investigate Biden, to dig up dirt on Biden. That's not what happened, at least according to the transcript and according to everybody involved in the call, including Zelensky himself. It was just to look into it, not to prove or not to find him guilty of something he may or may not have done. It's like, no, all right, we're going to withhold money, and we're only going to let it go if you prove Biden did something underhandedly and corrupt. It's like, no, I just want a fair investigation. If he didn't do anything wrong, okay, maybe Solkin, the guy who got kicked out, maybe he was a corrupt prosecutor. If he was, then what Biden did is along with the lines of what the United States has agreed to do in relation to Ukraine. Because there's a standing agreement to help each other with corruption investigations. So it's like, yeah. So if the prosecutor was the corrupt guy and he was improperly investigating a company that was on the up and up, well, then what Biden did was perfectly in line with his responsibilities, and it would have been in line with what Obama wanted. So that no problem. It's like, yeah, if a prosecutor is corrupt, getting that corrupt prosecutor out of the system is something that the Ukraine and U.S. have agreed that they would work together on. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So if Ukraine looks into it and is like, yeah, this is on the up and up, okay, good. That's all I wanted. But the Democrats keep insisting that Biden is innocent and there is no reason to investigate any corruption there. And so merely asking that it be investigated is asking for Biden to be improperly prosecuted and to be found guilty of something he didn't do. It's like, that's not... That's what you guys are trying to do to Trump, because it's been pretty obvious the entire time, with Rashida Tlaib getting elected and saying, we're going to impeach the MFer on the night she gets... that whatever, the night that she's celebrating that she's getting into Congress. That's the other thing, is prior to this vote, she's on social media. She's like, got this huge smile on her face. Yeah, we're going to impeach Trump. That's, yeah, somber and solemn. Yeah, and that this is completely not partisan, although only Democrats voted in favor of it. Yeah, way to get your bipartisan. Yeah, so I mean, all of this stuff together, you're like, how can you possibly believe the narrative that Trump is only interested in asking Zelensky to look into corruption because he wants to influence the 2020 election? How can you think that that is the only possible explanation? That's why this wouldn't hold up in court, because if you're talking about like something like a trial, and you're like, well, this person probably robbed and stole from this, but it could be somebody else. That's what the defense, that's what they're trying to do, especially in a murder case. When you're talking about like beyond a reasonable doubt is the measure of. So usually it's so sometimes it's a preponderance of evidence. Sometimes it's a what's the other legal term? Well, there's one in between. So there's a preponderance of evidence, and that's the minimum. And usually that's required for like a civil case. For criminal cases, usually it's just it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, but murder cases is beyond a reasonable doubt. There's an in-between term, and I can't think of it at the moment. But that in-between term would not qualify because there is enough of an alternative explanation for the events where you're like, yeah, that's plausible and that's plausible. We don't have any way of determining which of these two mindsets or which of these two motivations was a factor. So we have to err on the side of caution and say we can't prove guilt. That's what the Mueller report actually was alluding to, is like, yeah, if you're looking at it from one perspective, he's guilty, but there is a plausible explanation that would make him innocent. So since there is that vagueness and we don't know definitively one way or the other, we can't make a conclusion. And that's what Mueller was trying to, it's like, yeah, we can't do anything. And yet the Democrats tried to spin that as like, oh yeah, the only reason they did is because you can't prosecute a sitting president. And I'm like, that's not what he said. That's not what Barr said. And that was also brought up when they were questioning Mueller and they were questioning Barr on whether a sitting president could be prosecuted. It's like,
they did the
technically
same
you could.
Because they were also complaining that, well, even if you can't prove any of this, what about obstruction of justice? And they're like, well, if he didn't do anything, then he didn't obstruct anything. So we can't do that either.
Yeah.
So he fired Comey, and it's like, for actual decent reason. Depends on your perspective.
Yeah. So as long as it depends on your perspective, there is no clear answer. Like, you're like, okay, so what our justice system does is like, well, we default to innocent until proven guilty. And since you can't tell which of these two mindsets or which of these two motivations was at play, we don't have any way to prove reasonably that his motivation was of ill intent, as you claim. Well, since there are two plausible scenarios, we err on the side of caution and say, well, he's innocent, unless you can find something that's like, oh, this is the nail in the coffin. And yet the Democrats keep saying, oh, this is the nail in the coffin. And it's not, because there's an alternative explanation. As long as there's an alternative explanation for the series of events, you can't say, oh, this is beyond a reasonable doubt, or this is proof, and this is incontrovertible proof. It's like, no, it's very much controvertible. There's the entire Republican, all the Republicans and some of the Democrats in the House were like, nope, this is not clear enough for me. I can't support this. Okay, so there's another thing about this, or this vote. Tulsi Gabbard voted present on both of them.
Yeah, I thought she was doing fairly well, and then over the last few months, my opinion is kind of declining about
Yeah.
what her motives are or what she's even representing.
I don't know. I understand that she's looking to possibly run again in 2024.
Yeah, but she's the only one who just voted present. Like,
yeah. So I think
are you
she's trying
for
not to
it, or are
lose
you
Democrat.
against it? So it seems like she would be a. I don't know if she's
But
for it or
she
against
said
it.
that he was not guilty of these particular articles. Like when she was explaining her votes, she said he's not guilty of either of these, according to her. But she thinks that he deserves to be impeached.
Well, then she's in the same nonsense loony boat as the rest of them.
Yeah.
That you can't just
yeah.
don't
She
like them.
thinks that he has done things that are worthy of impeachment. It's just not what the Democrats have brought forth. And I'm like,
Okay, such as, then bring it up and investigate that. If there is something Trump's doing that's illegal or impeachable, like an actual offense, and you've got something, then investigate it. Fine. I don't think the public has any problem with that. You know, Nixon resigned because they were going to impeach him over an actual obvious intrusion of privacy, a crime. They have it.
yeah. And Clinton as well. They have video. It was like, yeah, you said this, and then you're like, oh, nope, I did not have sexual relations. Yeah, you said that you lied, and then you lied to Congress about it, and then it was proven that you did. So that's the reason for the impeachment, was that, okay, we can't trust you. You are actively lying to us to try to save your own skin. What's to stop you from doing that in other situations, like to the detriment of America? We can't trust you to be in office if you're going to actively lie to everyone, and we catch you in the lie, and it's only then that you're like, oh yeah, but okay, now that you caught me, okay, I did it. It's like,
yeah. So I mean, those are clear examples of where they have proof of something.
yeah.
If there's proof that Trump is doing something impeachable, bring it forward, and then you'll have yourself a real case of now we've got something to look into. Then you're going to get them, instead of a partisan vote, you'll see a more bipartisan look at it. You'll see Republicans, you know what? They may be right. This does sound impeachable. Here, it is nonsense. They don't have anything, and it just sounds like we really don't like Trump, and since we have more people, we're just going to kick him out in a vote.
Yeah. And so as far as I know, from my understanding of when Clinton was getting impeached, the original concern was of an ethical nature. Like, okay, he's committing adultery while being the president. Okay, JFK did that too. That's kind of public knowledge. But he did it with somebody who is an intern, who is... So there's kind of that abuse of power relationship, and so that's what they were investigating. But the actual charges they brought up against him were not related to sexual, indiscretion, but were related to, okay, these are things that you actually did in trying to save your, like, had he been found guilty of, okay, yeah, he had sex in the Oval Office, he had sex with an intern, it would have probably not passed the House. I mean, like, yeah, that's not enough of a violation. It's something, he would probably have gotten censured or something along those lines. But it was his behavior in the investigation where he's like, yeah, I did not do this. And he, adamant. And then his, it depends on what the definition of is. And then people like, oh, this guy is, yeah, okay. This guy's lying through his teeth, trying to defraud us, trying to do everything. Okay. This guy is not just somebody that we don't want representing our country, but it's not somebody Congress can trust, and it's not somebody the American people can trust, and that's why it got passed through. I mean, to some people, they might see them both as kind of a similar situation. I don't see them as similar situations. I see, as far as I know, Trump is just like, I didn't do it. You haven't proved that had they caught them, like, oh, we proved that you did it, and now we've got you on lying to us. Now we got you on perjury charges.
Yeah, but he hasn't
Nothing
changed
like
the
that.
story on anything. He's just like,
Yeah.
doing my job.
Yeah. So he hasn't changed his story. They haven't found any proof of what they claim he has done. So and the articles of impeachment demonstrate that, because they said abuse of power and then obstruction of Congress. So the second one is flat out ridiculous, because I mean, I've heard a bunch of people talking about this, and this is what I was saying when I first heard it, is like, but he's the executive. Like, they don't.
Listen, guys.
Yeah.
You're equal branches. You
Yeah.
don't control the president.
He is not subject to Congress, because that's what the division of powers is based on.
Say that when they sent out letters to certain chief of staff and their employees to come in and testify before Congress.
Oh.
And the guy, what was his name? Man, I have to look up his name. One of the cabinet members under Trump, and they were asking him and the people underneath him that reported to him to come in and testify.
Yeah.
This was like right after the transcript was released, and he told them no, because he had to go get time to make sure they got a lawyer, that they're,
and then
time
they said, oh no, you don't get it, you don't get lawyers.
They called it obstruction.
Yeah. Well, there's the other thing.
Schiff was out there saying, you can't do this. This is obvious obstruction. You've got something to hide. And they're like, you just sent a letter. It's not even a subpoena.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
just
other
a
thing.
letter asking if we would comply. And I'm telling you, I'm going to go get a lawyer, because we have that right.
As far as I know, none of the people involved in the House's investigation were subpoenaed. Anybody that did come in came in of their own accord. They were not required by law. They were not mandated to show up. So, because if they had issued subpoenas, and then those subpoenas were not followed, then this would go to the Supreme Court. This would go to the third branch, be like, hey, there's a dispute between Congress and the executive office, or the legislative and the executive branches. Well, who settles the dispute between those two? It goes to the judicial, which would be the Supreme Court. And they would look at what the situation is, and they would make a determination. But Congress knows, oh, yeah, this is all BS, and with the judges, two of them being nominees or appointees from Trump, and, well, it's kind of almost a split, 50-50 when it comes to liberals and conservatives on the Supreme Court right now. I think we need one more to switch it more towards conservatives, but Gorsuch has been voting along more moderate terms. So had it gone to Supreme Court right now, it's a little difficult to say which way it would have gone. It might be a 50-50, or it might be kind of like a coin flip. I mean, granted, there's an odd number of members of the Supreme Court, so it would go one way or the other. I'm not saying it would be like a hung vote, but I'm saying it would likely be, how many are in the Supreme Court? 7?
9?
9? Okay, 9, yeah. I don't know why I was thinking 7. So there's 9 total people are voting. It might be something like 5-4. That's a very, that is not out of the, that is kind of the more likely scenario of it going to of it going to the Supreme Court. We're likely to see a 5-4 split on this. It's possible that it's a 6-3, but it's not going to be like a 10-1 or anything like that. It's because, I mean, there are partisan lines even in the Supreme Court, but who knows if that 5-4 is in favor of Democrats or Republicans. I can't say for sure, and a lot of people, I don't know, maybe the Democrats will be like, oh, nope, the Supreme Court's definitely controlled by conservatives. At this point, I'm not sure. I would hope it would be something like 9-0 in favor of, no, your Congress is full of it, leave them alone. I would hope that would be the case, but considering Ruth Bader Ginsburg's stances on so many other things, I'm pretty sure she would be definitely voting against Trump. There's a couple other, I don't know any of them by name, but there are a couple others that are still holdovers from Democrat appointees for president, or Democratic presidential appointees in Supreme Court who would probably similarly vote along those same lines. Why are you telling me? No, restart in 12 hours. Not.
Yeah, but for an actual impeachment, this still has to go through the Senate.
Yes, so for the actual impeachment, it has to go through the Senate, which is the craziest part of all of this. Because Pelosi is like, well, now that it's passed, we're gonna hold on to it. We're not gonna send it to the Senate.
Why?
Okay, so I will. That's what she. So her claim is, and I think it's in this clip. Let me.
Sadly, the American people have witnessed further wrongs of the president, which
If
necessitate the second article of impeachment, obstruction of Congress. When the president's wrongdoing was revealed, he launched an unprecedented, indiscriminate, and categorical campaign of defiance and obstruction. Never before in the history of our nation have we seen a president declare and act if he is above the law. The president goes even so far as to say and act on this absurdity when he says, Article 2 says I can do whatever I want. No, it doesn't.
Okay, so it's not in that clip. I thought this clip ended with that because I know I saw it previously, like right before starting the stream, and I think it might be in this clip from Fox News here, but I don't want to click on that accidentally and then search through video trying to find it.
Well, still.
Let's see. So she has. So I'm trying to get her exact words. So let me kind of give the paraphrasing of what she said. She said she's not sending the articles of impeachment to the Senate until she can get confirmation from McConnell that this will be a fair trial in the Senate. And
well,
that's her explanation. That doesn't make any sense.
Not at all, because was this a fair trial in the House?
No.
Not even close.
Not even. Yeah.
I mean, they kept Republicans out for like the first week of. Some of the Republicans kind of just barged in and were like, "This is not right."
Yeah.
How are you excluding us?
Yeah, they were holding it in a chamber where access was restricted. Every one of the witnesses throughout the entire thing had to be approved by the majority lead, which is they changed the rules just so that way they could get that passed through, because that's not the usual House rules.
He's been kind of running this clown show since the beginning.
Yeah.
And he's obviously just making stuff up.
Yeah.
His opening statement was garbage. And later, when he got called out, he said, well, it was just a joke. For a congressional hearing on whether the actions of the president are impeachable, let's tell a joke.
Yeah. As your opening statement. And then, so the whole situation is messed up to begin with. And Pelosi is saying, we're not going to send the articles of impeachment to the Senate until we can get confirmation of what the trial is going to look like. Until you guys decide how things are going to be arranged, and then we can determine, this is going to be fair, this is going to be fair as possible, and then we'll pass them on. Well, that's not how this works. The House doesn't have control over the Senate. Again, similar to the legislative branch doesn't have control over the executive. They're supposed to be equal and separate, and they balance each other out, and they're supposed to be kind of opposing each other and keeping each other in check. The House and the Senate work similarly. If the House is abusing its power, it's up to the Senate not to bow down to the House, but to fight against the House, which means they are not subject to the authority of the House. Those are two separate branches within the legislative.
Set up that way is for those two different bodies, so something actually be put into legislation and out and become law. It has to pass through both.
Yes.
This checks and balances is supposed to keep all this nonsense from getting anywhere outside of Congress.
Yeah, and if she's saying, the Senate's not, or we're not going to give these to the Senate until the Senate agrees to do what we say, and they don't have to agree to anything you say. They're the Senate.
Investigation however they want.
Yeah, that's like saying, we passed a bill in the House of Representatives, but we're not going to send it on to the Senate to get it enacted into a law until we know that it's going to pass for sure.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
that never
what
happens.
I think is happening, and this is just kind of my own speculation here,
Mm-hmm.
they want this to be viewed as a victory for Democrats to be pushed out in the news that, hey, impeachment, they've succeeded with their vote. The president has been successfully impeached. Well, at least according to the House's articles of impeachment. Not so they're going to ignore the Senate at the moment, and that's what's being put out on the news.
Mm-hmm.
Because I got a call that evening from somebody, hey, did you hear the president just got impeached? And I had to tell him, I was like, no, it's not real impeachment. This is only half the process.
Yeah.
It still has to go through the Senate, and it's extremely unlikely that that's
Well,
going to pass because it's a Republican majority.
Yeah. So technically, it is impeachment, but it's not removal from office because Bill Clinton was
Correct.
technically impeached. But this
Correct.
doesn't quite reach that technicality for impeachment because, as I've heard from a couple of people, like the Sticks and Tim Pool were talking about this, and I think a couple other channels, but because it's still at the House and hasn't gone to the Senate, it's not an official impeachment yet.
Correct. It's not complete. They haven't done their job yet.
So, because what happened with Bill Clinton is, so the House passed it, and then it went on to the Senate, and in the Senate, they kind of just, they had their trial, and they're like, yeah, we're not guilty, he stays president. We're not going to, we're not going to remove him from office based on this. Same thing happened with the other guy who was impeached, Jackson. So Jackson was a little more close. I think he only stayed in office by one vote in the Senate, but it was at least the impeachment went from the House to the Senate. According to the way the Constitution is set up when it talks about the rules for impeachment, what constitutional lawyers were arguing is that, and what Trump's lawyers are actually asking for clarification is like, because it hasn't left the House, is it technically impeachment? Because in order for it to be official, it has to, according to what the Constitution says, it has to be delivered to the Senate. That's what makes it official.
Okay, so it would be like this. If you're purchasing a house, you've made your payments, you've got your contract signed, but they hold on to the title stating, well, we're going to hold on to this for a moment. Do you actually own that house?
No.
Was the sale complete?
No,
it was
the sale's not finalized until that title is passed over.
Correct. Or even if you've got a mortgage, it's still signed over to the bank that handles the mortgage.
Yeah.
Either way, that title has to transfer hands, or it is not a complete sale.
Yes.
That's the way interactions like this work. Do you have one job?
Yeah.
It's start to finish, or it is not complete. You're only partway through.
Yeah, and the reason they're saying it's not technically impeachment is because it can be stopped, which is there's no clear-cut rules in the Constitution.
Well, and then if they never do hand it over, then it's dead.
Yeah, it dies in the House, and nothing ever comes of that. So, which means the Senate, although they know the results of the vote, they cannot do anything regarding that vote until that is officially passed from the House to the Senate. They can make all their plans for a trial all they want, and it doesn't do anything. They are not allowed to act on that impeachment vote until they get the official they get the bill officially passed into Congress or into the Senate. Yeah, until then, their hands are tied. They can't.
I think this is just another play on the public. They want to push out that Trump was impeached, that part was successful. But as soon as this goes to the Senate, they'll go through their hearing, and it's an extremely likely chance it will just get shot down.
Yeah.
That it's not going to pass, especially having a Republican majority. That's kind of it's basically it's a extremely safe assumption it's going to be dead as soon as it hits the Senate.
Yeah.
No matter how they conduct their investigation.
So it's dead not just because there's a Republican majority in the Senate, but the Democrats already proved with these articles of impeachment that the Democrats aren't completely sold on this either. There was two Democrats who voted against it, and one Democrat who was like, "This is so shameful. I'm no longer a Democrat. I'm switching to Republican." Van Drew, right? Van Drew, something Drew. Drew something? Man, I should have looked that up. Yeah, but there was one Democrat who's like, yeah, I'm out. I can't even be associated with your party anymore. I'm going to the other party. I think it was Van Drew, but sounds weird saying it out loud. So I,
What would be even messed up, or I guess a little more hilarious, what if that guy gets reelected as the opposing party?
yeah, yeah. So it is
So
Jeff
he gets
Van
reelected for
Jeff
another.
Andrew Van is the middle name.
Yeah,
That's why
what
it
would
sounds
happen
weird.
if that guy gets reelected as a Republican for another term?
Yeah,
That would just be another slap in the face. That
this
was the right move.
yeah. So considering that he switched parties over this, it shows that he's kind of like, okay, this is a guy we may not agree with his policies, but at least he understands. It's like, yeah, he's got moral standards. He's like, yeah, you guys have yeah, what you guys are doing is wrong, and at least he's willing to stand up for that. That's going to be something that'll boost his numbers in the polls. I don't know if that's going to be enough to, to solidify a victory for him next election. I don't know if he's up for election this in 2020 or up for re-election. I'm not sure.
Not sure, but ultimately, that
Yeah.
seems like what the ploy is they're wanting to cast this as a victory on media because as soon as it's and it's shot down, victory is lost. No longer can they claim Trump's been impeached. It's just, nah, it was shot down. Nothing's happened.
So the other
Now it's a
weird
lie.
thing that is involved in this scenario is they did pass the USMCA while they were doing the impeachment investigation and while they so the USMCA, that's the replacement for NAFTA. It stands for the US, Mexico, Canada. I mean, because I keep hearing USMCA, I'm like, what the F? Yeah, it's the replacement for NAFTA. It's just the trade agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. I don't know. From what I can tell, I mean, I haven't read through the whole thing, and I've only been hearing bits and pieces from other sources. Not a huge change compared to NAFTA, but that was something Trump was pushing. Is like, yeah, this is one of his campaign promises fulfilled. That he was going to replace NAFTA with a better trade agreement, and this is something that Republicans are saying is better, and Democrats say, not much change. Like, well, based on what I can tell, yeah, it's not much change, but that is him fulfilling a campaign promise, and Pelosi even said this is a good deal, with their changes on top of it, but they passed through one of his pet projects while they're trying to impeach him, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That to me is a win for Trump, and then we're trying to get something for our side. Impeachment, all right, sure. At least we got that ish. Man, it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
So
considering that's one of the only things that has passed through.
Yeah, because I mean there hasn't been much legislation at all.
No, it's been constant attack Trump.
Yeah.
So the one thing that they finally do get passed through is one of Trump's platforms. It's what he was fighting for.
Yeah, one of the things he ran on. So yeah, again, they're trying to give themselves something they can spend. Like, hey, this is what we did, during the evil Trump administration. So there is the publicity is why they're holding on to this. But part of me, so this is where I put on my tinfoil hat and start looking into this. If you look at what Nancy Pelosi has said in the past and what Nadler has said in the past about this cannot be a partisan vote when it comes to impeachment because that will cripple Democrats if it is partisan, if only Democrats vote for this. And it's only being pushed through because then it, like, hey, and that's why she did the, hey, don't do that when they started to cheer, is like, so there's two parts of that. First is, they need to make it look like this is not politically motivated, like this is based on moral and ethical responsibilities, and if they're cheering, well, then it's like, okay, yeah, this is purely political. So she's trying to silence that. But the other thing is, they did not want this to pass through in the first place. The leaderships of the Democratic Party, like all the old school Democrats, like Pelosi.
If you look at Pelosi last year, when she was asked this, she was very much against impeachment.
Yeah.
The smart reason being because right now it does seem very partisan.
Yes.
And if that becomes the new standard, any House majority is just going to do that for the next president.
Yeah.
It destroys impeachment capability, period.
Yes. The other thing is it's going to hurt Democrats when it comes to the 2020 elections. And they don't want to lose the House, they want to gain the Senate, and they want to gain the presidency. But if they've shown that, yeah, the House, when it's controlled by Democrats, they act this way, and they pass completely partisan legislation, and they impeach the Republican president just because they have the majority, well, when voters go into the booths in 2020, they're going to be like, yeah, I want to vote Republican, or sorry, I want to vote Democrat, but look what they did last time. That's moderate Democrats and even some of the kind of older school Democrats who are not buying into all these the crazy Bernie AOC type people. They're like, well, I don't know if I feel comfortable voting Democrat this time. They may just not vote at all, or may vote Republican or Independent or something else. In which case, if the Democrats lose the House, that's going to be 4 years of them being powerless when it comes to the federal government. Because they're already, like I said, the conservatives have a slight majority in the Supreme Court. They have the executive. More than likely, president's going to get a term too, whether this impeachment goes to Senate or not. Granted, all the polls say, oh yeah, we've got Biden beating him, we've got Warren beating him. Yeah,
that's baloney.
Yeah. As long as the economy keeps going the way it goes, and as long as people who are in the middle, like that moderate group, is looking at this and be like, yeah, he got ran through the... Yeah, they ran him through the ringer. All right, I'm voting R down the line, even though I've been a historical Democrat, or I've been a moderate or independent. They're gonna be like, we can't have that again, and they're gonna vote. The Republicans are likely to take everything in a landslide come 2020 based on this impeachment vote. That's what Nancy Pelosi is like. So what I think is kind of going on is she did not want impeachment to go through because she knows this is going to hurt it's a small win temporarily in the House, but it's going to cripple them in 2020. And she's like, you stupid new representatives like AOC and Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and all the other people that just came in who are their first termers and they don't know anything and they're bright-eyed and bushy-tails and they've got these idealistic... They don't have the...
consequences.
Yeah, they don't know how... Yeah, they don't know pragmatic.
If this is not a moral issue and you make it strictly political lines, you're dooming yourself, because the whole purpose is you're supposed to be making decisions based off of some sort of morality, some sort of guidelines. You're not a puppet. You're making decisions saying, is this constitutional? Is this legal? Should this be part of legislation, or do we shoot it down? And if you can't even make those proper decisions when trying to impeach the president, which that concerns the entire nation, and your vote is, yep, don't like them, take them down. You lack proper morals for making decisions that lead to laws for this country.
Yeah, well,
you lack responsibility. You're not following through with your voter base. You're doing what you want. They are as loose of a cannon as they perceive Trump to be.
And that's the thing. That's the problem that I think Nancy Pelosi and Nadler have, is they seem to be more like, okay, this is what we want to do. We got to be strategic about this. We have to be pragmatic about how we approach this. And then all the other kind of more radical Democrats, they're like, oh no, we'll just do this. They don't think they don't think about the possible backlash. But it seems like Nancy Pelosi, even though I think she sounds kind of delirious in some of her when she's talking and being interviewed and things like that, but when it comes to her actions
out of her mouth,
when it comes to the way she's run her political career, you're like, okay, she knows the game. She knows which levers to pull and when to pull them. That's why she's the speaker. Even though I disagree with her on a lot of things, like the fact that she is able to manipulate things and able to move things, like, yeah, that shows that she's got a lot of time and that she knows how to play the game of politics. All of these new radicals don't, and that's why she's like, oh, come on, you guys are making this impossible for us to get anything done because you guys are so extreme. And even if you have extreme views, you got to focus them in onto strategic plays. Otherwise, you show everybody exactly who you are and what you're doing, and they can fight against it. And that's what she's kind of like, no, you guys are dumb. This is not the... And so that's
that was obvious with the whole Green New Deal.
Yeah.
They just slapped together every possible, like, semi-socialist whatever idea into one massive document that made no sense and has little to do with climate anything.
Yeah.
And then pushed it behind this false premise. And that's why they got like 4 votes out of everything.
Yeah.
And even Pelosi just sitting there like, why would you do this?
Yeah. So even though I think
like
that
playing poker with your cards face up,
yeah,
so everyone can see what you're doing, and you're like, this is what I got, and I'm gonna beat you guys. That's not even, you don't even have a poker face. You're not even playing a game right. You're just
it's like playing poker and then like
don't throw all your hands.
Yeah. If you get a what's that called? When you get to trade cards, I don't know if there's a term for that. Like in regular poker, like not Texas Hold'em. It's like, oh, I hope I get 3s. I wonder what he's going. Oh, please give me a king or a jack. Oh, what is that guy got?
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of freshmen or even people that have been there a little bit that are being swayed towards this just outright stupid way of operating within Congress. The job is not to pick a massive platform and just shift the entire country. One small piece of legislation at a time that you think can get passed, that even some Republicans can look at it and vote on it. That's how you get your stuff through. Yeah.
And so Pelosi understands that. And Pelosi, even though she may be like, okay, what the Republicans want is all wrong, we need to do this instead. But they don't reveal their entire political platform, which is why it's, oh, no, we don't want trans kids and drag queen story hours and things like that. We just want equal rights for gay people, and that's the platform they push on. And like, oh, we just want equal rights for homosexuals so they can get married, so they can spend time with them. And then that gets passed through, and then they push on to the next objective, and then they push on to the next objective, and eventually you get the drag queen story hour. But the new version, these new Democrats coming in are just like, hey, we're just gonna get rid of everything. We want open pedophiles, and we want. They're just saying all the things. They're giving away their end game, so they don't have that fallback behind. Oh no, we don't want everything. We just want this small little. No, the new people coming in are like, no, we just want everything. Hey, slippery slope. We want all the way to the bottom.
Well, what I think is going to be even worse. Why would Pelosi and Nadler kind of shift their stance?
Because they have to.
Because if they don't comply with what the rest of their party is asking for, they're going to be basically dethroned from their position.
Yeah.
So they're trying to keep hold of it. However, when this backfires, they will be blamed for it.
Yeah.
It's a lose-lose for...
Yeah, so they're trying to...
They should have just stuck to their guns and at least shown some morals.
Yeah. So they're trying to do the most politically... the least politically destructive action to their career, because they know once this goes to the Senate and it gets shot down at the Senate and it gets shot down bipartisan in the Senate, that's it for them. Their political careers are over.
They're gonna get eaten up like piranhas.
Yeah.
Attack their own.
Yeah, so all the old school Democrats who have been there for a while, they get kicked out as well. All the new people get replaced as, because hey, they're worthless too. And it becomes a Republican majority. That's what they're looking at right now, and they're trying to, like, how do we avoid that fate in 2020? So they're looking for all kinds of, like, okay, what can we possibly do to push this off and stave this off? It's like, well, if the articles never go to Senate, then we can just claim, hey, they would never give this a free they would never make this a fair trial. They would just vote along party lines in the Senate. That's why we never pass it on. We're hoping in 2020 get a bunch of Democrats in the Senate, then we can pass these articles, and then we can get a fair trial, and then he gets impeached. That's what they're.
A big what if, and that's not going to happen.
That's their. Because these new radicals have pushed, have revealed the entire strategy, that they've gone out there and blurted out the end game, and now they're kind of like, okay, now we can't pretend this is small and little increments like we usually do to get things passed. How do we make sure that? How do we keep this from biting in the butt until the last possible moment? Okay, this is a Hail Mary, this is our last option, is okay, we hold on to it long enough, and we keep fighting, like, oh yeah, that's not a fair trial, hopefully win in 2020, and then get a fair trial where he gets kicked out, even if he gets reelected in 2020, and if he doesn't get reelected in 2020, then we can be like, oh, well, then there's no reason for these articles of impeachment, alright, job accomplished. They're backed in the corner where that's their only play. Yeah. And that's what I'm seeing, or that's what, I mean, granted, all of that is kind of speculation on my part, because it seems like the older Democrats with the longer careers and all that sort of stuff, who have been manipulating things behind the scenes and all that, like Pelosi and Nadler, they're looking at the new generation of them and they're trying to teach them, but these people are morons and are unteachable. They're trying to teach them the sneaky way of doing things, and it's like
you can tell the difference.
Yeah,
because during the beginning of this Russiagate impeachment part, you could hear Pelosi come out and make comments like she's praying for the president.
Yeah,
that's old school tactic. There are still Christians, and it seems they are more on the conservative side now versus Democrats. There are some who are on the Democrat lines, but the more left they get, the more that becomes an old school mentality just on the DNC side. But comments like that also mean they generally would have some kind of moral stance. Like, there are some things that they think are right and some things they think are wrong, whereas progressivism is just, if it's old, it's wrong.
Yeah.
You do. There's no rhyme or reason for it, and they have no reason to claim why it's better or why it is more moral.
But they feel it's more moral. You have to
participate in other people's delusions, right? If they're an animal kin, that means they're an animal kin, and you better agree with it because you're going to hurt their feelings, blah, blah, blah. We now need legislation to protect people's feelings.
Yep.
That's not based off of any objective morality. It's not based off of anything other than this is the new, let's push it through. That actually sounds like some kind of slogan.
Yeah, well, that's their mentality. It's like, yeah, hey, this is new and it's something we're not currently doing. It needs to go through, and they will appeal to emotions and pretend and say, oh yeah, we've got the facts and the science, and I'm like, well, when your facts and science are scrutinized, they don't hold up. So
yeah,
that's what they're.
Well, it's like a lot of the research things where maybe there are facts in science, but you paid them for a result, so you're just going to get that result. You didn't say, find out if this is right, or, does this make sense? Find the ifs, ands, or buts, the yes and no of it. Just find out yes. That's what I'm paying you for.
Yeah, and if you don't find a yes, then we take away your funding and give it to someone else.
That's what most of climatology is right now.
Yep. All right. So
the world's gonna end.
So this topic we've been talking about for about an hour, but there's a lot of stuff here. But so there's something else that who mentioned this? Was this Sticks or was this Tim Pool who was talking about it? The other thing about impeachment is if it goes to the Senate, that becomes the Senate's primary responsibility, and Warren. No, it's everybody except for Biden and Buttigieg and Yang, out of the Democrat candidates, would have to devote themselves to the impeachment trial in the Senate. So everybody who's currently running as a Democratic presidential candidate has to suspend their campaign, go sit on the impeachment trial, deal with all of that until that gets resolved, and then and only then could they go back to their campaign for president. What is it? So Klobuchar, Warren, Sanders. Who else is in the? I guess Tom Steyer, but he's not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the majority of the front runners, aside from Biden, now Buttigieg is sitting at like 4% or something stupid like that, so he's kind of not important. Yang is sitting at like 1%, so not really important. So everybody except for Biden gets stuck in Congress until it's kind of like, well, now like who knows how long the actual impeachment trial could go on. So that's the other thing that they've got that Pelosi is kind of considering. And so I don't remember if it was Tim Pool or it was Sticks who was pointing out that this could be they could be holding it back to try to torpedo Warren and Sanders, because those are the other two primaries besides Biden, just so they can get Biden as the nominee. So they might be holding us back until like, well, let's send the actual stuff over in March, and then hopefully this impeachment trial goes on for 6 months, and by then it's too late for these other people who have disappeared when it comes to presidential debates and all that sort of stuff, and then Biden just walks. That is a possibility, although that's kind of like 4D chess type stuff, which I don't think they're smart enough. I think the Democrat establishment is just trying to hold on desperately to the control they do have and not lose it. They're trying, what can we possibly do to not lose it? That's my view on things. I don't think they're trying to use the impeachment trial as a way to manipulate who or which of the Democratic candidates gets the nomination. Because as they showed with Clinton, that's not a problem. They can just manipulate the DNC rules to favor whoever they want to win.
Yep.
So the trying to use this to consolidate the base around a specific candidate seems a bit of a stretch, but that is something they have to consider, is that this will take a lot of their front runners out of the campaign trail once this hits the Senate.
Yeah. Overall, I think this is more of just the DNC is getting ripped apart and has been confiscated by progressive ideals.
Yeah.
And it is destroying their party.
Yeah.
Eventually, DNC is going to have to split and actually have like an old school DNC moderate party, and then a progressive party, which is stripped out, a quarter to a third, whatever their user base. And now neither one really has a chance to stand up to the conservative party because they just diminished their numbers.
Yeah.
They're not going to start fighting against one another, which we're already seeing within the House. They're already doing. So.
And there was a bit of that going on when Trump was first elected, where there was the older Republicans and there was newer Republicans, and there was a bit of infighting, and there was the never Trumpers and all that sort of stuff. But that has kind of,
I think it's died down.
Yeah, that has died down a lot, and
you're doing that, and that's nonsense. Okay, we'll cut it out.
Yeah, so it seems like Trump has rallied the Republicans around him and his strategy, and a lot of the people who used to be never Trumpers or were actively fighting against him are now kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm on Trump's side now. And so he has consolidated Republicans behind him for the most part. There's still a couple outliers in that Justin Amash guy switched party. Well, he became independent or whatever and then voted for both articles of impeachment. But aside from that, most of the other Republicans have either come around and be like, okay, we're unified with a solid mission, we're all behind President Trump, or they've been replaced. That's kind of how a lot of it went. And so now most of the Republican Party is on board with Trump. And if you can see from the House votes and from what the Senate is talking about, it's like, yeah, this is all BS. We're behind the president 100%, at least on the impeachment thing. I mean, we may disagree on other stuff, but we're at least like, yeah, this is all, there's no way this is going to pass the Senate.
Yeah.
So, let's see. So he's done a good job of consolidating his base, and it looks like Democrats are fracturing. Like, and there is no, yeah, there is
They
no
have
clear
no,
leader for them to rally behind and consolidate again. So,
and if the biggest one they got is Joe Biden, they're in for a sore butt whooping in
yeah,
2020. I mean, he seems like a nice guy, kind of just
creepy,
pick
but
out the stuff, but but he's
hey,
just there's the charisma is not there, no real platform or policy other than him saying, "I was VP under Barack, and I've been on the Senate, and look at some of this older stuff. I'm here, you know
well,
me, and good old Joe." That doesn't fly. That's nobody cares.
yeah. So
You either
maybe,
put your platform down, state exactly what it is, like Trump did. I'm going to do this, 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 and this. There you go. Now you got somebody who can get elected based off a platform. They don't have that. Everything coming out of the DNC debates and from the candidates is nonsense.
yeah. So that was. So I guess maybe we'll talk about a little bit more about the SNL because that's a good transition. Because that was one of the only funny jokes in the cold open was when Biden challenged Trump to a push-up contest without shirts. Yeah, so Alec Baldwin's Trump is absolutely horrid. I don't know why they keep having him back. I don't know why they think that's a good impression.
There was one joke that I thought was hilarious when he had the hoop earrings, and he's like, "Impeach me outside. How about that?"
Yeah,
Because
okay, that was
the incident, and I was like, "Dude, that's actually kind of funny."
yeah. Impeach me outside. How about that? Yeah.
Campaign.
Yeah, the rest of that sketch was just kind of it was groan inducing, and I just I don't
Yeah, see,
understand.
is they already had a skit a couple of weeks ago for what was it, the ABC debate?
Yeah,
Something,
so yeah, what you're talking about, the one with Woody Harrelson.
but they treated everyone a bit closer instead of as cartoonish, like Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah,
They did a better job representing what her point was while still making it funny. But
yeah.
this time, like Cruella Deville with thunderstorms and whatnot, I'm like, what is?
Yeah, I was like, that doesn't make. I was trying to figure out who she was supposed to be, and then they had to say who she was. I'm like, well, then that's not a. That's if they
Yeah,
have to explain who she's supposed to be, it's not a good impression, and it's not a like.
and the Bloomberg stuff is also kind of funny, but I think it's more of just that the guy who's doing it. Like, what are you doing here? Oh, I don't know. I just thought it would be fun. I paid a guy off. So that's a little funny, but yeah, not as funny as the previous one.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought the one with Woody Harrelson was pretty good. I was
Dude, Woody
surprised.
kind of nailed it.
Yeah,
Impressed. The way he had his teeth, like just.
yeah, yeah. I don't know why they didn't get Harrelson back for the next one because
Larry David, right? Is that his
yeah,
name?
yeah. Larry
I
David does a spot on Bernie.
tried
Yeah,
Bernie Sanders. So both times I thought Bernie Sanders parts were funny.
yeah. So I mean,
But
yeah.
sure, yeah, I'm gonna use that. So I know if someone moved it.
Yeah.
That's how he's gonna solve global warming.
Oh yeah, so the thermostat. Okay, I get. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they got Bernie Sanders because Larry David plays it perfect, and the kind of stuff, the off the wall
Yeah.
Bernieisms seem to be there.
Okay. So
Uh,
yeah.
they, they're there. I think they just had a better cast last time to actually convey the
Yeah.
personalities. The time it was
Yeah. And I
some fun
don't.
stuff, not as good.
And having Kamala come back, and I don't know what the like that whole that I think that's what ruined it for me. It's not like I don't. It's not like the Maya Rudolph is terrible, and I think she actually has done better as Kamala Harris in previous skits. But in that one, I was just like, that was she's hogging the entire skit, and this what all of her contributions are not funny. I don't get this. I guess it's kind of playing off of the recurring role with the hair blowing and stuff, but that's I guess it was kind of continuing the running gag, but there was that whole that's what I was like, yeah, that the Kamala Harris and the too much focus on her, even though she's not even running, and she was she's not even running.
Yeah.
She ran out of money. Why is she there? It's they kind of alluded to that, but her whole presence in that skit was just kind of meh. Oh, so yeah, the Mr. Robinson's neighbor. Have you seen So I don't watch SNL. I only watch the clips that SNL put on YouTube after it had aired.
Yeah, the only SNL stuff I've seen recently is just the DNC debates, 2 of those, and then probably like that Justin Bieber Calvin Klein ad a couple years ago. I don't watch
Yeah.
SNL. I've caught clips and then I just like, meh. Maybe occasionally they do like a Jeopardy or something.
Yeah. So they did an episode of Black Jeopardy, which not as good as Celebrity Jeopardy, but kind of funny. So that one, I thought, okay, that was one of the kind of weaker sketches. Although one of the jokes at the end kind of pulled it around. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a good all is that's like a 5 or a 6 out of. Usually SNL skits recently are like a 2 or a 3. So
yeah, I don't even want to finish.
Yeah,
it.
there's kind of they're like, is it over yet? And is there something here?
Maybe more even just cringy, like, ugh, that's just kind of. I really don't want to watch the rest. It's not out of boredom. I just don't want to see where this is going.
Yeah, Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood was the best of the bunch as far as skits when Eddie Murphy was there.
Oh, okay, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, because it's yeah. So it's you know what Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood, right? It's the Eddie Murphy version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, only it's in the ghetto and everything's terrible.
Or something type neighborhood.
And like the older ones, like the word of the day was
crackhead, something like that.
Yeah, crackhead or like pyromaniac, and he's talking about burning down his landlord's house or his apartment and stuff like that. So this was kind of a return to that, and I don't want to give away the whole sketch, but it starts. He's talking about it's been 30 years since he's had a show, because this is like the first time he's been back on SNL in 30 years. And so he it's the same kind of setup, only with kind of the newer problems that are facing people in those kinds of communities. One of the issues is gentrification, where a bunch of white people will move into like a rundown, a urban neighborhood, and they'll start constructing new apartment buildings and all of that stuff. And they'll make it too expensive for anybody else to live except for like snooty hipster white people. And so the word of this, I'm trying not to give too much away of this skit, but that's kind of the setup for all of the stuff that happens in there. It's really, I thought, I was like, wow, I can't believe SNL went there, because it was stuff that was kind of edgy but funny, and I'm like,
well, that's what makes the comedy funny, is when it is edgy. When it's when it could be slightly offensive to one or another group, but then they'll do a skit right after that's offensive to a different or opposing group.
Yes.
It's mixed it up, and the whole purpose of that kind of sketch stand-up comedy is to poke fun at odd ideas or at current culture issues to either put out a brighter side or just poke holes and poke fun at the absurdity of some of the controversy.
And that's why I was like, that skit was amazing, because I can't believe, I was like, is this SNL? Because usually SNL, the reason their skits are so boring most of the time is because they're towing that line of like, oh, we don't want to offend anybody for the most part. And then if they do run something that could be controversial or offensive, it skews leftist. It's kind of like for a lot of their political whatever, its joke is at Trump expense. Like, I don't know if you saw the UN whatchamacallit, that was where they're talking about Boris Johnson and Macron being like the cool kids at a high school making fun of Trump.
Oh, okay, they're in the cafeteria. Yeah, I caught part of that. It's like, it's not even funny.
It's not funny, and like, so anything that would be kind of controversial or edgy is at one side's expense and not the other side. Because they were making fun of both Boris and Trump, but the other guys were no jokes made at Macron or the other guy's expense, or at least not any anything that would have been kind of mild at best.
Like, that's, I think even in Canada they're getting tired of Trudeau.
Yeah, like Trudeau is a joke in Canada.
Last time, this is probably it for him, unless he manages to stop being an idiot.
Good luck on that.
Yeah. I mean, he's about 10 times more racially insensitive than Biden. Biden occasionally said something like, that's a bit. Trudeau, I mean, he's got those old blackface pictures, fine, those surface, but he went to India and
I
put
mean,
on like ceremonial garb and had his whole family dressed like that. And even people in India are like, what the hell are
we,
you doing?
yeah,
We don't
that's
even
not.
do that. It's That's like for a special
Yeah,
wedding or birthday or that. Nobody wears that normally.
yeah. So the and so from what I've experienced, because I work with a lot of people who are from India, and from what I can tell, it's like yeah, for the most part, they wear regular dress clothes, like button up shirt and slacks, and the women will wear something kind of similar, like business attire, and they wear that not just at work, but that's kind of their usual dress code for like going out and eating and stuff like that. But during holidays for their for whatever religions, so like because they've had holiday parties at where I work, and they do show up in ceremonial garb during
Yeah, like
particular
that. What was that? The Festival of
yeah, the
Colors or something?
festival of lights. So that was something, and
Like,
they
yeah.
yeah they so they had
So we do the
an
same
office
work.
party slash retirement thing, and a lot of people that were there were wearing those traditional garb. But then the rest of the time, they don't wear that, and so I was like, yeah, that's those are for specific occasions and all that sort of thing. And there a lot of people who are in India, like, oh yeah, that was the other like Slumdog Millionaire, right? He's like, yeah, it's a button-up shirt and pants, and that's the usual. That's what a lot of people wear. Like, and then
Yeah.
for special occasions or ceremonies or wedding ceremonies and engagement parties and stuff like that, then they go the full traditional garb. Yeah,
Like going to Japan and dressing up like a geisha or walking around in a kimono through the city, and it's like
yeah,
either you're kind of cosplaying or part of a select group, but that's not normal. Everyone else is just wearing clothes. They'll do that for a festival,
yeah,
some whatever ceremony or event they have annually. Then people dress up in traditional garb. It's like that all around the world, but
yeah.
that he doesn't
Oh
get
yeah,
it.
so it'd be like going to Germany and dressing up in lederhosen and stuff. You're like, yeah, they don't
Yeah.
wear that on a regular basis.
Some suspenders or straps and a nice little hat and
Yeah, they do that for like Oktoberfest, and that's about it. Yeah,
yeah. So I that's why those types of skits because it looks like it's pandering to
yeah. So yeah, there's a little too much
one
pandering,
group
and
while
the
trying to poke
jokes.
fun at another without having anything of substance to
Yeah,
beef.
and any jokes that are that they don't. A lot of their skits on SNL don't toe that or don't push the line or toe the line, but almost everything from the Eddie Murphy SNL was kind of along those lines. There was one skit that just I don't know who decided that was a good one. Something about elves and a polar bear at the North Pole. I guess it's because it's Christmas themed, but that was kind of lame. I'm surprised Eddie Murphy agreed to that. He was still like gung ho about the part and stuff like that, but because I mean that was what kind of made the whole thing great is because when he was doing the part, he brought his Eddie Murphy intensity. I'm like, where has that Eddie Murphy been for like 20 years?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
because I
he's
mean like his recent movies and stuff like that where he like because like Beverly Hills Cop, right? He's kind of like he's a jokester, kind of an a-hole, but he has the Eddie Murphy like yelling for no reason a lot throughout the movie.
yeah.
Yeah, because that's
Just
kind of yeah.
a person that kind of just demands attention, but it's also hilarious.
Yeah. So, and that's what he did a lot on the old SNL. It's like, I'm about to do something, pay attention to me, because it's gonna be funny, and it works. It works for Eddie Murphy, and so he did a lot. I mean, that was kind of what he was bringing for a lot of the skits, which I was like, yes, that's classic Eddie Murphy. He hasn't been like that for like what was the last good movie Eddie Murphy was in? Because the last one I can think of is Goldfinger or Bowfinger. Um, that was the last good Eddie Murphy movie that I can remember.
Something recently, but I haven't heard any reviews. Like, is he a wannabe movie star pimp guy?
Oh yeah, Dolomite is my name. So that's something on. So
Yeah,
that's
I haven't seen it, so
yeah.
maybe
I
it's good. I
I
don't know. I haven't seen reviews.
it's on Netflix. I don't know if it's out yet or if it's coming out. I
So
might be
that I
worth.
may watch.
Yeah.
It looked more along the lines of kind of some of his better characters. But I think once
it is a biopic-ish. Like, that was an actual comedian who... So it's based off of actual events. I don't know how accurate it is, but...
I mean, it seems like after that first Clump or the Nutty Professor movie,
yeah,
got into that whole dressing up like odd people stick, and it was funny once, and then after it's just
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at Coming to America, he played a bunch of different side characters that you don't notice unless you're looking for it. Like he played all the people at the barber shop, like all the old guys. So the old Jewish guy, yeah, and it's the old Jewish guy who's telling the joke about the soup. Like, I didn't get that joke for the longest time, and I don't remember why I was thinking about it recently. I'm like, oh, that's a terrible joke, but
yeah, it's just a corny joke, but it fits that character, and it took me. I saw that I think when I was a little younger, but I didn't realize it was Eddie Murphy doing those parts until years later.
Yep.
I was like, hey, he can play a diverse cast of characters, but he got too much of like, instead of funny because they're diverse and accurate as to what he's trying to be, it's funny more as just dumb slapstick.
Yeah.
So that's why they made fun of that Tropic Thunder, right?
Yeah. The
fatties, and they were all just around farting.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what the second Nutty Professor movie turned into. The whole family sitting around farting at the table.
Yeah, that's all it was.
That's funny for like 2 seconds, and then if you've already seen it in one movie, nobody wants to see it again. So he got kind of into juvenile slapstick, not even good slapstick, just juvenile comedy that it no longer had any substance. Whereas Coming in America, it was funny, but it's because it was subtle funny.
Yeah, and he wasn't a slapstick character in that. He was like he was the straight man for the most part.
Yeah. Well, even at the what was that? The church benefit kind of thing. And the guy came out, called himself Sexual Chocolate. It was hilarious because it seemed like a believable character.
Yeah.
A guy who had one semi-hit song and thinks he's the shit and getting out in front of everybody. Sexual Chocolate, everybody. And he has like one fan, just that pastor. and nobody. That's the hilarious stuff. That's where he shines, and I do miss that kind of Eddie Murphy comedy.
Yeah. So one of the things he announced in the monologue is they're making a sequel to Coming to America. I don't know how that's gonna work.
They're scary.
Yeah.
The first was amazing. I've seen that. I don't know how many times. Sequels that are coming out years later, like instead of a direct sequel, those seem to fail even more than most other sequels do.
Yeah, so hopefully it won't be terrible, but it should be good. But yeah, watch the Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood sketch and his monologue, and even though Eddie Murphy is kind of what made that whole episode of SNL watchable, Chappelle shows up in his monologue and delivers probably the best line of the entire evening, and I can't believe they let him do it because I don't think it was scripted. I'm not sure if it was or not, but I after hearing that, I couldn't breathe for like 4 minutes. I was like, dude, it's...
Oh, okay. There was one other skit from a couple months ago where Chappelle, it was like a Walking Dead skit, but everybody was Chappelle's old characters from his show.
Yeah.
No.
I'm saying, no, this was the Eddie Murphy one, and Chappelle shows up during the monologue. I mean, yeah.
I just mean, as far as funny SNL stuff, it seems it's funny when you have an older comedian that actually needs to be funny come back, and they have to support the whole show.
Yeah.
So, every once in a while, have something good. Yeah, I have to check out Eddie Murphy.
Again, the other thing to talk about there is the reason Eddie Murphy hadn't been back is he had some kind of beef with he left SNL to go do movies, and then after he had left, people that were still there were making jokes at his expense, and he was kind of like, I saved the show, like, almost single-handedly.
Yeah.
And they kind of acknowledged that at the, the 60th reunion or something like that. And Eddie Murphy came back on stage to, while Chris Rock was talking about how great Eddie Murphy was and how Eddie Murphy was the reason Chris Rock was even on SNL. So, Eddie Murphy came out and didn't really say much other than thank you and that sort of stuff, but he had a pretty, he had kind of a grudge against SNL because he basically saved the show, and he's kind of like, yeah, I've got movie offers now, I'm going to go over there and do that. And then SNL, now that it was, off of life support, just took every opportunity to bash on Eddie Murphy. And he's like, yeah, F you guys. So...
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so glad that they finally kind of buried that hatchet, and hopefully hopefully this is kind of a return to form for him, because, like I said, his career has been kind of in the toilet. Okay, he was the voice of Donkey in Shrek, so I think that was the last thing he did that was funny or at least watchable.
Was Life any good?
No, Life is a really, really good movie. It's not so much a comedy. Him and Martin Lawrence are...
movie, more of his... You mean back to form as Eddie Murphy comedy stuff.
Yeah.
He's done some straight roles, and I thought that was...
Yeah, I like Life. I've seen it a bunch of times. It's a
really
good movie. It's just not... It's not like the hysterical Eddie Murphy kind of thing. So it's not... I mean, even though Eddie Murphy was in it, it would have been a good movie if that was, Cuba Gooding Jr. or somebody else in that role. So...
Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah, so, Beverly Hills Cop, nobody else could be Axel Foley but Eddie Murphy. That's...
Oh, yeah, correct.
And Coming to America, if somebody else was in that, it wouldn't be the same film. The royal penis is now clean.
Yeah.
He didn't say that, but the movie just wouldn't be the same movie if he wasn't in it. Whereas he's been in good movies, but they're not like Eddie Murphy. Yeah. He kind of disappeared, I guess, after Donkey, and then it's where has Eddie Murphy been? He's been in movies, but they're forgettable roles or forgettable movies, or they're movies where anybody could have done that sort of things.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So next thing I got lined up is this is, man, talking a little too much, man. It's already almost 9 o'clock. All right. So a little bit of setup for this. TP USA did a conference in Florida, and this is where this is happening. So that asswipe is Nick Fuentes.
Welcome back to Slightly Offensive.
Wow, here it is.
Really weird.
Ben Shapiro. Let's hit the T-pose. Well, T-pose Army. Hey man, we're about, wow.
All right. What do you think about Ben Shapiro?
He's not drinking enough adrenochrome if this is happening right now.
So if you don't know, we're here outside the Turning Point USA conference where Nick Fuentes was kicked out after trying to enter. And we also have Andy No here documenting, and we are running into Ben Shapiro apparently. Are you going to walk across and greet him?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if he'll greet me. Are we going to go over? Let's go over.
All right.
This can't be in the middle of the street, though.
We'll keep going.
Yeah.
Ben, it's great to see you. Why did you give a 45-minute speech about me at Stanford, and you won't even look at my
Hey, he's with his kids.
Come on, I'm right here. Hey, let him cross, man. I know you're with your family, but I can't get you anywhere else. A 45-minute speech.
All right, I'm gonna pause it right there. So even though Ben and Shapiro is in town for the TPA conference, Nick Fuentes is there and wasn't allowed in because he's Nick Fuentes, and TP USA knows who he is, and they're like, yeah, we don't want anything to do with him. And so Nick Fuentes is outside all this hotel is not where the TPUSA conference is being held. This is just Ben Shapiro, the hotel he's staying at during this conference.
Yeah, it looked like he was out for a walk.
Yeah. So he's just out for a walk with his family. So other people who've been talking about this were talking about these guys harassing Ben Shapiro outside of the TPA conference. I'm like, no, this is somewhere completely separate, and they're coming up and be like, hey, why won't you talk to me and all this sort of thing. It's like, this is not the place for that.
Yeah, it's like all those protesters who went into, what was it, some of the senators where they were sitting down with their families at a restaurant.
Yeah, so they've done that to Tucker Carlson. They've done that to Sarah Sanders.
That's not the place to do that. When someone's out with their family in public, just let them have their family time. If you're at an event or a conference, then wait outside the lobby area of that conference building, and then see if they'll be willing to have a discussion. I know it looked like it was a chance meeting that Ben Shapiro was on the other side of the street, but
this is so. I guess I'll play the rest of the clip.
Tabloid stuff where the paparazzi is just annoying the crap out of people in their day-to-day life. That's something the public doesn't really look kindly upon.
Yeah, that's the same impression I got. It's like the paparazzi is like, oh, hey, what's going on, and taking pictures of people as they're walking around grocery shopping or just out with their kids and stuff. Yeah. All right. So let's play a little bit here.
That's our free speech warrior, everybody. Champion of the battle of ideas. What's ideas, man?
Hey, come on, it's his family, man. It's his family.
You can hear it in the background.
Aren't you supposed to rise above instead of going down in the mud with
Because he
someone?
gave a 45-minute speech about
You're only repeating that because you're trying to make yourself sound important and you're not.
I think she's got a valid point there. Yeah, because he did give a 45-minute speech about Fuentes and the Groypers, and that was a response to them. Like, they keep showing up at events. They have been talking about Shapiro and other conservatives nonstop, and it's like, okay, you guys have been attacking me and my organization nonstop. You called Matt Walsh a race traitor for working for me, and then I point out how your ideas are absolute nonsense. I think I don't know if you saw the Stanford speech that he's referencing here.
Nope, not yet. I kind of put it on my to-watch list. Haven't got to it yet.
But I mean, I think Ben Shapiro did a really good job of talking about all of these, what these guys actually believe, pointing out actual incidents. Is like, yeah, these guys are not
that's
credible.
That's what he does with most everything. So I do listen to Ben Shapiro. Most part, I think it's fairly conservative. Sometimes I'm like, you're getting a bit too far off on one idea or two, but in general, pretty intelligent guy, and I can agree with a lot of his stuff. But when he's talking about groups, he doesn't take it from the platform of just trying to make them look like idiots. He points out what it is they're discussing, what their ideology is, and how it's impractical, or how it's wrong, or how it goes against conservative ideals, things like that. He did the same thing with Antifa.
Yeah.
He brings up what it is that they're saying they're fighting for, and then how they're not actually doing that.
Yep, and his Stanford speech was along those same lines. And
He's been doing that for years. That's his modus operandi. He's not the guy that make you look like an ass clown. They do that themselves.
Yeah. So now all these Fuentes and the Groypers are saying that Ben Shapiro spent 45 minutes slandering them, and he's like, no, nothing he said was slander. He talked about things that there's video evidence for, things that you've actually said, things that you are recorded either on video or you've said that is recorded in print, and other things. Like, everything that he brought against you is all verifiable. That's not slander if it's stuff that's legitimate. If he talked about your ideas and why your ideas are incorrect, it's not slander.
The problem is, why is he getting banned from these events? Because it's not the first one. He got out of that other TPUSA event with the what's his name, Chris
So the other event that he was kicked out of was Politicon. That was
Oh,
not controlled by TPUSA, but TPUSA is apparently, after these guys have invaded so many events, are just like, what? We're done. We're tired of letting you guys hog all the Q&A. We're tired of you guys asking the same questions at every freaking event as if they aren't being answered. Because that's what these guys are doing. Like,
because he's there to stir up controversy, not to put forth a legitimate ideology, political or religious or whatever. They're not clearly stating points or objectives. They're there to just try and shoot other people's ideologies or speech down and cause a disturbance.
Yes.
And that's kind of counterintuitive to an open speech or free speech type of discussion. It's coming out of his mouth, hey, you say you're for free speech, but they are the type of group to disrupt an organization or event to cease someone else's speech or to try and bring them down rather than have a legitimate back and forth discussion.
And the other thing is anytime somebody gives an answer that isn't the same answer that they, or the same ideology that they say, they're like, oh, he's not answering the question. Because I've gone through tons of this guy's videos where he's analyzing, like, oh, just look at that, Charlie Kirk's not answering this question. I'm like, yes, he just did. That was because he said, your view is incorrect, and this is what we believe, and this is what the actual conservative position on this is. What you guys are saying is incorrect because of these reasons. He's like, oh, he's not answering the question. Look at that. He's avoiding the question. He's answering something completely different. I'm like, no, he answered your question that's being asked. And you had two guys at two different events asking the exact same question verbatim. And he gave
on the video at the beginning.
Yeah.
There's a dude in a suit with a beard.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked like the guy that was holding the rosary at the Charlie Kirk thing, where it was him and the other guy on stage, and they were saying, the conservative party isn't, or I guess gay people can be part of the conservative party without getting ostracized, or whatever that event was.
Yeah.
And there's a dude standing up saying, we don't want this in the party.
Yeah.
I thought he was at the beginning of this video walking next to him.
Yeah, he probably is. But so they had one that's basically the same question asked. So one was to Charlie Kirk at one of his events, and one was to Ben Shapiro at his events. And Nick Fuentes, in reviewing both of those questions and answers, says, "Oh, they're not really responding." And I was like, Charlie Kirk gave an answer, and it was an answer Nick Fuentes didn't like. Ben Shapiro pointed out, okay, that is an incorrect question. Not racist question. He didn't dismiss it off, and he's like, okay, what you're thinking about this is incorrectly because you're ignoring this, and this is why you believe what you believe. Although, to believe that, you got to be ignoring facts and evidence. So that's not a conservative position. And here's what conservatives actually believe, and here's the reasons why we don't believe what you believe. And I was like, both answers I thought were like, yeah. So while Charlie Kirk didn't do as well in his response, he gave an answer to the question, and that answer was like, yeah, that's along the lines of conservative thoughts, and and Ben Shapiro gave a more thorough answer, and in both cases, Fuentes on his show was like, oh, look at him avoiding the question. I'm like, how is...
Oh, okay. So it's kind of along the lines of if someone was talking to Antifa, and Antifa says, we are against fascism. That's what we're fighting. And then you point out, but your actions are that of a fascist group. And they're like, no, we're against fascism.
Yeah.
They're missing the point of,
well,
they're claiming to be representing this, but they're actually not.
Yeah. And you can't convince them otherwise. You can show them as like, okay, this is what you said. This is what conservatives believe. See how the two aren't the same? And be like, oh, you're not answering the question. You're just...
Well, I mean, because I remember being in on a stream a couple weeks ago with you where you were covering some of the videos, and it looks like he does have... It seems like his assumption is conservatism is what would be considered white ideology, as in it comes from old U.S. where it was predominant white, and so it's a kind of a white thing, but it never was.
Yeah, and what these guys do is they look back at the Constitution and they look at the Declaration of Independence. And even though the Declaration of Independence specifically states all men, it doesn't say all white men. They look at the first, the meeting minutes of the first
Okay.
meeting of Congress.
It's ringing a bell. We got on the Constitution as well, and I said there's no reference to
Yeah,
black people.
yeah. I thought there was at least one, but no, none. So they go to the meeting minutes of the first meeting of Congress, and they point out that in the meeting minutes, it specifically says white citizens in those meeting minutes, because at the time, blacks were not allowed in Congress at all. And if you go to the, I forget who, this might have been something Shapiro said, but they actually, I don't know, I heard it something I heard this week or last week where they were talking about the Constitution, and they actually changed the, so it's, the right to life, the right to liberty, and and the pursuit of happiness. The original verbiage on that, instead of pursuit of happiness, was the right to own property. And I can't remember if it was Shapiro or somebody else who was talking about this, but the reason they had to change that is because slavery, they hadn't abolished slavery with the Declaration like some people had originally planned. And so now you've got this contradiction where, okay, you have the right to be property and also have the right to life, liberty, and to own property while being property. That would have created so they changed the verbiage instead of to own property to the pursuit of happiness, because they're like, yeah, this is something we can't resolve at this point in time because that's just going to contradict itself, and that's going to create a whole bunch of, it's going to create more problems than it solves. So they changed the wordage to pursuit of happiness rather than the right to private property. So the other thing is, if they had left it as the right to own property or the right to private property, people might have turned that as a justification as a right to own other people. And they're like, well, that's not, we're trying to avoid that. A lot of the people.
Yeah, because if it was considered that slaves at the time are your property and you have the right to property or that private property, now you can claim it's constitutional to have slaves and that it's unconstitutional to take that right away.
Yes. So this changing it to pursuit of happiness kind of avoids both of those issues. That's the way the Constitution was written. Is it was vague enough to explain that, hey, here's how we're going to operate with slaves, while not stating that you actually have a right to those slaves, or that any particular race involvement. Yeah, and it's only until eventually they're like, yeah, okay, finally the abolition of slavery altogether. Good.
Yeah, and with the abolition of slavery, it still fits 100% within the Constitution.
Yeah, so they go to these occasional documents or these one-off quotes from individuals and from the older documents, like, okay, that's called cherry picking, because if you look at the totality of all the letters Jefferson has written over his entire life, instead of one quote or from Jefferson and one quote from Ben Franklin, if you look at their entirety of their writings, it becomes a lot more clear on what their actual views. And yes, Jefferson did have some very racist ideas because that was based on the science of his time. The science of his time said that there were genetic differences between the different races. So they were saying black people were genetically inferior to white people, and that was the science at the time. And that's what Jefferson was basing a lot of his writings on, was the knowledge of the time. And then later on in his life, he's like, that is incorrect. That's
in his writings. He originally part of this Enlightenment movement when they started doing more. This is kind of during colonization of Africa. Mm-hmm. They actually thought black people were somewhere in between, I guess, apes and white people. Like they were kind of the middle link. So they were a subspecies of human. Yeah. Somewhere in between. And then after a while, you can see in his writings, he's like, that's completely accurate. It's not the same at all. These are just people with different skin color. Yeah.
And that's similarly Ben Franklin as well. Some of his earlier writings, he always seemed to be an abolitionist, but he was in the frame of, okay, they don't deserve to be slaves, but they can't stay in America, and we've got to we'll send them back to where they came from, and they can go and live their lives there. And there was a lot of some similar of the founding fathers had similar viewpoints, but then later on, Ben Franklin is he one of the things that I remember like this man, I gotta remember the exact quote, but he said, "I used to think that blacks were inferior until I was shown they could be taught to read." And I was like, that to me solidifies like, holy crap, that was the mindset of people back then. They actually thought that black people could not read no matter what. Like, you could sit there for days and they wouldn't be able to read ever. And people, like, intelligent people who invent all kinds of stuff and who, you know, the body of their writings is so vast, and yet he's like, oh, yeah, I used to think they couldn't even read. And you're just like, how do you have that in your head and you accept that as truth, and you have to, it takes someone showing you, by the way, we got some kids in school here, and they're reading at the same grade as or the same level as their white counterparts.
I think it's being taken for granted, and probably I have. We were raised where there's no real difference between race. It's just down to your character as a person on whether I think you're a good person or not. You know, judge somebody after you've had a chance to interact. But that was not always the case. That was always the normal mindset. So if you've got a bunch of people that look completely different, you bring them over, you know, a lot of them, no, they weren't living in normal houses and stuff. They're kind of still stuck in mud hut.
Yeah.
Is where they came from. They don't speak the language. It's going to take a while for them to learn how to speak English, for them to learn, can you get the reading and writing of a completely different country? And on top of that, them being slaves, they weren't being taught any of that to begin with. They were just out in the field working, being whipped and mistreated. What would you expect?
Yeah.
They're not just going to learn how to read and write in 5-10 years. So it was a gradual process. And once found out, they have the same intellect, they can learn. You just have to actually teach them just like you would your own.
Which is kind of funny because they had to put laws into place in a lot of these slaveholding states, or at least in some of the cities, and where they were like, you can't teach slaves to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where they're
once
like,
found out,
don't teach them to read because that flames the spark of rebellion.
mm-hmm.
So, but during
maybe that's kind of taken for granted, is that it seems common sense now, but when you're taught that this is a subhuman subspecies and they are not being taught how to integrate within your society, there's going to be that odd separation, that misunderstanding. And not the best part of U.S. history, but I can see why it existed.
Yeah. And so what Fuentes and his group, they're looking at some of the earlier stuff that Jefferson and Washington and these others were writing, and they don't look at the entire body of their works and like, later on in life they're like, I was wrong on that. This is they're equally human. They can be taught to read and write. They can be just as religious. They can actually be more moral than some of the white people. So this is and it was like, so this is they at towards the later ends of these people's lives, they're like, they are every bit as human and deserve every bit the freedom, and we could also live together, and we don't need to separate societies based on race, because we've a lot of these people have demonstrated, because they've persevered through all this and came out more moral on the end and being more of a Christian, more
it's just like you do.
It's like, well, if they've shown that they can persevere all that and still be moral individuals at the end, that speaks stronger of their character than the white people who are holding them slaves and all that sort of thing. He's like, there's like I said, there's a whole, like, these people focus on narrow passages or narrow points in time and act as if, that's what they intended from the beginning and that's how they thought it should always be. I'm like, nope. If you look at the entire history instead of the parts of history that you focus and you show your other people, the view that you're painting is not accurate.
Well, it's even worse with that type of mentality, is that it's the exact same mentality of, say, like black nationalists or those who think that the Constitution was based off of race entirely and needs to be done away with. That's because they're being lied to and manipulated by people with that same ideology.
Yeah. And when they are taught something in history, they're taught specific subsections that fit that ideology. They don't they're not taught the whole thing. It's like, yeah,
Race biased from the likes of Nick Fuentes, but when used on the opposite spectrum from people who they should be more offended by it because he's basically saying they should be excluded due to race. They use that same mentality and say, now I'm going to use that same mentality and we're just going to advocate for stripping the entire country.
yeah.
Wiping away the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. We need to start over with something else because that's all race related, and it's not.
Yeah.
On both sides, that type of mentality just tears things down, tears it apart.
Okay. So there's a little more to this clip.
This is the only time we can get him is when he's crossing the street and he uses. I guess he's just like the Palestinians using human shields, right?
Okay, yeah. Using human shields. Okay.
What a messed up. Wow.
That would be if he was planning on going out and meeting them, and he brought his family along, just to say, "Oh, but yeah, I'm with my family, so I can't do it." No, he was out with his family, and you found them. Like, how can you say that? Oh, using his family as a human shield is like.
Well, what is he doing with his posse?
Yeah, it's not like he just went up to him by himself and was like, "Hey, Shapiro, just talk with me." No, he's got a whole crowd around him. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at the beginning of the video, it looked like he was almost hesitant to cross the street and go talk to Ben at first. And you hear these guys behind him. Well, you're going to walk up, you're going to talk to him, you're going to confront him. But like there's people yelling in his ear, incentivizing him to be a jackass.
Yeah.
He's got the wrong people around him, just feeding his ego, and you can see it on his face. Yeah.
So the other thing I'm noticing here is he kind of short, right? Like.
Oh, that's him standing next to the guy in the red shirt. Yeah. Probably like my height.
Yeah, I think he's like 5'6", maybe 5'7". So that's the other thing is like he talks a big game, but I don't think he would be quite as brave without all these people around him.
Let's move to the
I'm not saying like Ben Shapiro's intimidating or anything, but from what I understand, Ben Shapiro's like 5'8", 5'9", something.
Yeah.
So I was like, it seems kind of weird that he would be intimidated by Shapiro, but I mean, yeah, I can't say much because I'm 5'4". I'm pretty short, but I went up solo to a group of protesters at an event and just asked them questions. So I was like, why does he need a whole posse to go up and talk to Shapiro?
Yeah. Well, I don't think all the people around are in his posse. I mean, this is obviously from Andy No's channel. He's just there reporting. And slightly offensive guy is just there reporting.
Yeah, so Andy No is not a groiper as far as I know. He's an actual on the ground reporter, and he just films things and then later on talks about them. So so he was just there to. I don't know if he was there as, just because he's like, okay, Fuentes is up to stuff. This is probably gonna, or if he was just like, hey, I'm out here recording everything, and I'm on my way to the TPUSA conference as well.
There was another guy near the beginning of the video. It's the guy I brought up a few times on the Slightly Offensive channel.
No way.
Conservative reporter, but he just goes to events, conversations with people. Yeah. But he meant that it sounded like they just kind of met up because they saw it. They happened to be in the same area.
Yeah.
So saw Nick Fuentes, started filming. The Slightly Offensive guy was like, oh, and there's Andy and there's Nick Fuentes. Let's see what's going on. And then they just randomly ran into Ben Shapiro. It was like all a random encounter, but so many people in one area, they're filming because something's bound to happen.
So a lot of people are criticizing Shapiro for not talking to Fuentes and for using his family as a shield, and the Fuentes guys. I just think the whole situation, like, this is not the place to do that. And if Ben Shapiro won't talk to you, he doesn't have to talk to you because you're a small nobody. He's got millions of subscribers. He's got an entire business built around him. And you are just trying to piggyback off of him for fame. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, even if he wanted to have a legitimate conversation, that's all I have to say. is you think we could ever arrange a time to sit down and have a conversation. That's it. Instead, that's not how that's presented at all. And obviously, Ben Shapiro wasn't there to discuss anything. It looked like him, the way he's dressed and his wife is dressed, they were just out for a walk.
Yep.
Which, that's not the time to stop and discuss with a loudmouth guy like that.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to put your wife there and your kids there standing out in public while he's yelling at you about whatever. That's a debate topic to have either be at online or at a conference or something elsewhere.
The other thing is, unfortunately, Ben Shapiro's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because he can't keep ignoring this guy because apparently he's got it's still small comparative to Shapiro, but it is somewhat sizable and growing because these guys keep dominating events. So he's kind of like, he can't just keep ignoring it and pretend it goes away because this seems to be growing. And that's why he addressed it at the Stanford event, where he changed what he was planning on talking about and instead talked about these guys and why they were wrong about so many things and what they actually believe and what they are. So he can't keep ignoring them because they won't leave him alone. And they won't leave, Charlie Kirk alone. And there seems to be enough of them to warrant, like, hey, this is granted, it's probably not a huge group, probably maybe a few thousand. That's not, but it's not insignificant. So he can't ignore them completely and pretend they will eventually go away. But he also, if he addresses them, if he invites Fuentes onto his show, that's kind of like, well, you were a nobody and you used the heckler's veto and you used my platform and my events to build up a reputation for yourself and get on. It seems like it would be rewarding a negative behavior. So I'm not sure what Shapiro can do at this point, and a lot of people are criticizing Shapiro over this and saying, hey, he should just debate Fuentes and all. It's like, but that's validation for what Fuentes did, and if Fuentes can go to have a bunch of people build enough of a following and then go to these events and then constantly harass Ben Shapiro until he eventually gets a debate, well, that means anybody who does a similar tactic should be able to do the same thing. And so then Antifa is going to start showing up at events and then like, oh, hey, we'll stop our protest strategy. We'll just go to the Q&A and ask the same questions at every freaking event. And eventually we'll just have a debate and then we'll build an audience that way. To me, it's a kind of a lose-lose situation. I don't know. And I think he chose the least bad choice. Because it's not like choosing the lesser of two evils, but it's the least worst choice, and just saying, okay, I addressed it already, I'm just going to ignore it from here on out, because that seems to be his stance on this. I've said all I can say about the subject, I'm just going to ignore it from here on out. That seems to be his position.
Yeah.
So, and granted, it's not good optics, and then now Fuentes is probably just, oh, see, look, he can talk about me for 45 minutes. I talk about him and his group and all these other people for hours a day on my channel, and he talks about me for 45 minutes total, and then maybe a few minutes here and there on a different shows. But I spend my entire career talking about him and Charlie Kirk and pretty much nothing else. Oh, but Fuentes doesn't say that last part. I threw that in there, but he just says, "Oh, he spent 45 minutes talking about me, and then he won't even talk to me. He won't even debate me. Won't even acknowledge I'm here." It's like, yeah, that's. Hopefully, this guy ends up going away. I'm not sure if these groypers will. All right.
Probably not. I think it's just going to be one of the small offshoots that they'll just be there, just kind of an annoying part of the political spectrum.
So, the last thing we're going to talk about, hopefully this is going to be fairly short, but I done effed up because I apparently, I should have known better than to mess with this particular group, but I didn't. And so now my Twitter is permanently suspended. I have appealed the suspension, and that appeal was denied. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Twitter's policy and why that doesn't make any sense, but also about this particular group. And this particular group are the Swifties. Taylor Swift fans do not pick a fight with them, apparently, because
You can get banned from disagreeing with Taylor Swift fans?
yeah, like I've disagreed with a lot of people. I've said a lot of things that Twitter has made me delete in order to get my account back. For some reason, I crossed the line by criticizing Taylor Swift, and that is an offense you cannot recover from, apparently. I don't understand. I don't get the mentality behind Twitter's policy on the reason they banned me. So I've got that pulled up and I will show you. But so what started this is Taylor Swift released apparently a new single called "The Man." It's off of her newest album, Lover. It's so bad. Okay, I got to start off by saying Red is a phenomenal album. 1989 is a really good album overall. It has a lot of catchy songs, has a lot of clever lyrics. Like, Style has that amazing guitar intro. I don't care who you are, if you like music, Style is a good song. I don't like the message behind Style. Like, lyrically, it's a booty call, but the delivery and the music on that is excellent. What?
Style. Is that the one that sounds kind of 80s-ish?
Starts off with that guitar lick, the dun 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 dun, and then the.
I have to go look that up again. I think that's
the intro. The intro, that guitar lick is just grabs your attention immediately, and you're just like, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. With the James Dean look.
Yeah, I was like, yeah,
something like that. Okay, yeah, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's a really that whole and the music video goes really like, and music videos for that entire album phenomenal as well. Reputation and Lover, the complete opposite. Just garbage lyrics, boring songs that make you want to bash your head into the wall. The only redeeming things is some of the music videos are really stylistic and cool. But the rest of the album, like the album doesn't stand on its own without some of those music videos, and that's my view on. So I was saying this in the comments, is like, yeah, some of her older stuff is really good and actually shows that she's a musician. The more modern stuff, it pales in comparison, and I kept saying, I was like, well, the only thing that I can see is it seems like all of her newer stuff is based on this feminism ideology, and most of her older stuff was not. And I think that's a problem for her, and that's degraded her career and her music. And so this is the lyrics to that particular song. So bad. I'll start off with the chorus. I'm so sick of running as fast as I can, wondering if I'd get there quicker if I was a man. No. Okay, that obviously this is based on misinformation on her part. I don't know what's going through her head or what people are telling her. 80% of men are complete failures their entire lives. That's statistically, that's what happened. 80% of all men are failures. It's not the same when it comes to women. So I guess I should say failures when it comes to producing a lineage or offspring. 80% of guys, nothing. Their entire lives, never have offspring. It's something like 60 or 70% of women do succeed in having offspring. And when it comes to life, that's kind of like the biggest success you can claim, because you have a lineage that will continue. 80% of men throughout history, no lineage to continue. They're gone from history. Maybe they're lucky if they get their name written in a page in the history books. 80% of men, It's like they never existed. Not so much for women. That is, it is kind of almost the flip side when it comes to women, as far as, you know, having people remember them and leaving a legacy behind them. So,
Well, probably a big part of the issue here is she's one of the most successful pop singers in the
Yeah.
history of the planet.
yes.
So this can't really be coming from a personal perspective, because that doesn't apply.
Yeah. What I would argue is a lot of her success is due to the fact that she is a woman, because a lot of the songs that she produced early on, yeah, not so much. A guy singing in a cafe playing his guitar, people would just laugh at some of these songs. But because she was an attractive girl, oh, hey, there's a bit of an appeal here. Even though some of them were kind of, you know, what's that called? Not juvenile, but not immature, but
It was written by a kid.
Yeah, a lot of her earlier stuff, you're like, you can tell it was written by somebody in high school, and you're like, yeah, that's
Inexperienced. That
Yes.
would be, that's probably the term, inexperienced.
But what her earlier songs, what they had was they had the fact that she played her own music, because she played a guitar, she played several different instruments, she plays piano, banjo, several different instruments. That contributed to the fact that led to her early success. It's also, she's an attractive woman, writes her own songs, plays her own songs, sings her own stuff, doesn't use auto-tune, all that sort of stuff. All of these things combined.
Well, I mean, she did have some catchy stuff,
Yeah.
even if it was a little simplistic, like the Romeo song. I thought was really good.
Yeah, no, well, her first song that played on the radio, Tim McGraw, and Teardrop, that's from her self-titled album. Like, yeah, those were catchy songs that made it to the radio, and they deserve to be on the radio. But my perspective is, like, if a guy was writing a similar song and did all the same things, not so much a success. An example of this, Teddy Geiger. I don't know if you know who that guy is.
No.
Kind of similar thing. He multi-instrument, plays and writes his own songs. He had one kind of breakout song, and then kind of disappeared. He was the you saw that movie The Rocker with the guy Dwight Schrute from the Office, and what's her name from Superbad? Can't remember her name.
Emma Stone?
Yeah, Emma Stone. You didn't see The Rocker?
I'm not sure.
Was it called
not
Rocker
ringing a
or
bell.
The Rocker? So Dwight Schrute is playing drums or whatever, and Teddy Geiger is playing guitar and singing, and Emma Stone is like the keyboardist or something. I don't remember what she was doing. But they have a rock band that kind of finds internet success and all that sort of stuff. Anyway. So Teddy Geiger was in that, but
That's really all true, because there's guys like Justin Bieber, or
yeah,
why can't I remember his name now? Red-haired guy.
red-haired guy.
Yeah.
Never Gonna Give You Up, Rick Astley?
No.
Oh, Ed Sheeran?
Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
Right? And it kind of came up because they were talented. I think it can happen for both, but
No. Okay, so Ed Sheeran didn't find... So she found success when she was 16.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, Bieber was what?
Yeah, Bieber was...
12, 13?
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, okay.
What I would say
so
is-
let me clarify this a little bit.
Get away with more, but as you get older, her music seems to have gotten a bit simplistic.
Yes.
But she can get away with it. Whereas if you listen to Bieber, I actually listen to some of his later stuff. His early stuff, I can't stand.
It's the opposite for Bieber.
He's had to mature with his
Yeah.
music styles,
Like,
and
'cause-
his content, lyrics, or
Yeah.
he would have not been relevant.
Yeah. So
Ed Sheeran,
his most
content.
recent album or whatever, the one with what's that song called?
like Diplo.
Go
that one with
Love
the
Yourself, right? That the one that
Oh, yeah.
has the Go Love Yourself. That is a very clever song. I don't know if he wrote it entirely, but it's like that's kind of like the wow. It's a good way to say go F yourself without saying go F yourself.
Yeah.
I was like, and the whole song all together. But yeah, he started off. He played the drums. He sang and was a good-looking guy. His career started off like crazy, and then it took a huge nosedive when he became like this kind of unwantable, like it was kind of this dreg and all
Just
that.
like a jackass.
Yeah, he's got a criminal record. He's kind of being a douche to everybody, and he had to climb his way back up. And he made his comeback with the album that had Go Love Yourself, or what is the name of that song?
That Where Are You Now song.
Yeah. So that was his song where he's like, okay, I'm actually gonna do this legitimately and actually prove myself. I'm like, yeah, and he did a good job of that. So
Yep.
I forget why I was bringing that up, but yeah, his career seems to have gone the opposite way. He started off with this pop trash, throwaway stuff, and then became a musician over time. Where it seems like Taylor Swift had kind of the opposite. She started off being a good musician, but like my argument is that if she was just a dude that was mildly attractive and was playing those songs, it'd be kind of like, oh, hey, that's fine. You get to be the house band or whatever. Not likely to have gotten the success she did. My argument is that because her lyrics, good songs, great performances, but they don't hold up to the same standard that a lot of these male artists, like Justin Bieber, I think is like the main exception to that, and I don't know, but there are a lot of these teeny bopper female artists who get success because they look good, and I think that's part of the appeal that Taylor Swift had going for her. Like if she looked like Susan Boyle,
Kind of. I would say yes and no. So she started off in the country music genre,
Yeah.
which in country music, male and female, they can be appreciated by a lot of different people.
yeah,
There's a lot of talented female country music artists, a lot of talented male
but
artists.
the
Tim
one,
McGraw, what's
yeah,
his name? Dave Gwen Stefani. I forget all their names, but
Blake Shelton.
Blake Shelton. Just there's a vast array of people out in the country music, so it's easier to break into that scene because it's more of just if it has that country sound, if it's got those nice, warm, fuzzy feeling lyrics that just kind of represent the wholesome American lifestyle,
Mhm.
it picks up quick.
But even then, you're talking about in country music. There's still a lot of these people that find success and get they're good looking people. I
Yeah,
guess
I'm not
the one
gonna
exception to that is kind of Garth Brooks. Like
But
Tim McGraw, Brad Paisley, Keith Urban, they're good looking people. What's her name? Shania Twain, like super hot. Miranda Lambert, also good looking.
well, then I would say the point is not so much she wouldn't have had success if she was a man, but being good looking as an individual while having
Yes.
talent is a better route to success than
Yeah.
being just average.
Yes, that. I guess that's a better way of saying it. Is like, yeah, had she been an average looking, I guess had she been an average looking male or female, not likely to get success that she has had. Now,
Yeah, the only thing that seems to compensate is extreme, just once in a million individual talent.
yes, like I would put
Acting out-
Adele and Susan Boyle are kind of like that. Like they're not physically attractive. Like they're not the
On a typical beauty scale.
Yeah, and like
But-
Adele, if you look at she released her first single and her first album, whatever, when she was 18, I think, or maybe 17. But like "Chasing Pavements" is an amazing song, but she was pretty big when she was singing that. Like I mean, even at her age in high school, not your typical like teen bop or not your typical teen idol sort of thing. And she did slim down later on in her life, but she's always been kind of on the heavier side. But her voice and the lyrics and like she's a multi-instrumentalist as well. Like, yeah, just a phenomenal career. But even she has not had the success that Taylor Swift has had. Like, that's pretty bizarre
I
to
would think it's
me.
more of the issue is
Yeah, so I think
match the lifestyle when it feels like it's a personal statement of either overcoming a triumph or what your fears are or what your likes are. You know, she's in that lovey-dovey romantic, wishing for a good boyfriend kind of thing in a lot of her earlier songs, or even breakup songs where she's listing off, you know, different breakup stuff. Whatever. At least it felt like those were her lyrics. That was experiences in her life. It was something relatable because it's natural way a lot of people feel, and she was able to put it into a catchy bit of music and, you know, do her stage shows. I think that's what has sustained her and brought her up.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say the looks did have a bit of play
But-
in her career, but when she started getting to more of the pop stuff, some of it was catchy, some of it had still pretty decent lyrics, but stuff like this is not genuine.
Yeah, but so what I would my claim again, this is subjective on my part. I think if Adele had been a fat man and had still done the songs and the albums she has done as a man, still would have been a success. Like that's I can't. I mean, granted, there's no time machine. There's no way to prove this is, but if Adele had been born a man and had still produced the same albums and the same quality throughout her career as she has done, only as a man with a penis, I think still would have been a huge success. As you know, still probably would have done the soundtracks to movies and stuff like that. Like she did the opening theme for Skyfall. Like I think if a man had done the same work, would have had the same results. I do not think a man singing Taylor Swift song in the style she's singing them and all that sort of thing would not have been success. This is her style and all that sort of things, I think only succeeds because she is a woman.
Actually, probably like that Fearless song.
Yeah.
If they're guy singing that, nobody cares. They're like, well, why wouldn't you just? But it would catch more to a young girl who's you know has an innocent appeal and is tackling the world. That's a good perspective for her to have. That is something that is a desirable trait. It's for a young woman to look at the world and be fearless. So that's an uplifting, positive message. It's catchy. That would make sense. So you may have a point there.
Yeah, so that's my perspective. Is like I was reading through these lyrics and I was sitting in the music video or the song here, and I'm like, does she not realize that she owes the majority of her success to being a woman? That's what I was seeing. I was like, if she's like, okay, my perspective is if she had a transition surgery now to make up for the fact that she is a woman, nope. I don't. Maybe her career would survive that. Or
what
his career
probably happened with your Twitter and why is because it's almost taboo to say women have privilege.
Yeah, so that I'll get into why the actual tweet that got it suspended, which makes no sense whatsoever. Because that I was like, okay, yeah, I've broken the unwritten rule and all that sort of thing. But okay, let's so some of the things here is like, so the first verse is I would be complex, I would be cool. They'd say I'd played the field before I found someone to commit to, and that would be okay for me to do. Every conquest I had made would make me more of a boss to you. And I'm like, okay, I don't know why this is a view. I mean, granted, maybe I'm in the wrong on this, but men having a lot of sexual conquests before settling down, I don't think that's a good thing either. I think both is wrong. Maybe that's because I've got a skewed view on these things, but like, because she's pointing to the fact, you know, when a woman sleeps around, she's called a whore. When a man sleeps around, he's a pimp. That's the argument. It's like, I mean, there's some people who view that as a net positive, and I don't understand those people at all. I guess maybe that's me. I'm like nope. Being a man whore is still being a man whore. it's so I that to me seems like a very weak argument. Is like, oh yeah, she's had multiple sexual partners, admitted that on several albums and stuff, I guess by now.
I think that's just not appealing to most people. Well, most people looking for a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
If you're a woman, do you want to hook up with the guy who slept with 80 women? Probably not. And if you're a man, do you want to hook up with a woman that's slept with 80 dudes?
No.
That's a
So-
bit high.
All right, there are statistics to back this up. This kind of this view, I guess. So statistically, the more sexual partners a woman has had, the more likely she is to get divorced or not to be in a long, steady relationship. And it's something like 1 to 2. It's something like 50%, but beyond 2, it starts to go like I think it's like at 3 it jumps up to like a 70%, and then just kind of keeps climbing from there. It's like, well, once she's had like 5 or more, good luck having a steady relationship for the rest of the life. I mean, just statistically, that it's ridiculous. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but when it comes to men having multiple sexual partners, there's not as much of an impact on being able to find a long-term steady relationship. That, to me, that's like, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a good thing to have, but that kind of explains a little bit more why there is more of a negative on women sleeping around than men sleeping around. And that's, I think both are terrible, and both are setting yourself up for failure. But my problem mostly with this is not, and I guess, yes, there is that viewpoint that some guys sleep around and that they're considered an alpha male and all that sort of thing. And when women sleep around, they're not technically considered an alpha male. They're that's an insult or a low thing to be. Let's see. But my problem is she's not saying that men shouldn't do that and men should be held to similar standards. My problem with this is she's saying, no, women should be able to sleep around as much as they want and be praised for it. And I'm like, no, that's the wrong. Nope.
It's going the wrong direction. I don't think men should be praised for it either. That why not just slow your roll, calm yourself down?
Yeah.
For men and women.
Yeah. So I think complaining that men are praised for sleeping around, that's a legitimate complaint. Complaining that women should be able to sleep around as much as they want too is like, no, that's no thanks on that. That's taking it the wrong direction. But yeah. Yeah, so there's a couple other lyrics that what's it like to brag about raking in dollars and getting bitches and models? It's all good if you're bad. It's okay if you're mad. Oh. No. Not true. Like so guys getting angry as well. Like that's so bizarre. I mean, because this is someone who likely believes in someone who can't say likely. No, she does believe in the thing of toxic masculinity. And I'm like,
yeah, she just had a statement at some music award a couple days ago.
Yeah, so she does believe in the idea of toxic masculinity, and that's like
masculine privilege.
Yeah,
I think what term she used.
Yeah, and it's like, well, so if you're a guy, you can be bad and you can be mad, and that's okay. And it's like, no, nobody thinks it's okay for men to be mad.
No, I mean,
like, it's not okay for anybody, regardless of gender.
People do get mad.
Yes.
When men get mad, they have the potential to do more damage or cause more harm. That's why there are men groups and organizations, boxing and MMA and heavy athletic things to let out aggression without harming your loved ones or your family or whatever. It's why guys go do activities to let out aggression. So it's more beneficial to have a group of men who say, I understand what it's like getting mad and not know how to release pent-up aggression. Here's a healthy way to do it. That would be a, kind of like an MRA or the reason to have a Boy Scouts without girls. Sure, there's plenty of activities that can be co-ed, no problem. But at some point, guys need to separate themselves, need to have a chat among men and say, here's the healthy way to
Yeah.
Be a
That's Jordan Peterson hit like his most of his lectures, and especially the stuff that he talks about in the 12 Rules for Life. It's talking about men have these incredible capabilities, but they has that energy and that drive needs to be focused on something. And when it's let run wild, that's when we create all kinds of problems. And that's what he's talking about. Is like right now we've got this problem in society where men that used to be able to find a decent woman, used to be able to create a happy family, nuclear family, and be able to set down and focus their energies on something. These guys, because of the liberation of sexualization of women, where women have all the power, and these 80% of men that are getting looked over because they're not alpha, well, they've got all this pent-up rage and energy, and they're just using it, and they're destroying things. Because he was talking about that in reference to the incels and, you know, kids shooting up schools. It's like, yeah, that's kind of the... It's like, yeah, they've got this pent-up energy, and they don't know where to direct it, and they can't put it into something positive, so it goes into every direction possible, and that means it's going to go into things that destroy. That's a problem, and it's not a problem just because they're born with a penis. It's a problem because they're not being directed on where to focus their energy and where to put that aggressiveness.
They don't know where to belong in society. They're just told you're toxic.
Yeah.
Because you are you.
Yeah, you're toxic for existing. So there was another line in here that I guess I skipped over here, but when everyone believes you, what's that like? Because people don't believe women; they only believe men. That's what's going on there. It's not like that is something that's only a problem for women and not a problem for men at all. Oh.
Well, nah, I don't even want to bring up the Kavanaugh thing again.
Yeah,
There's
so many examples of that. So
that was true. That would have been open and shut within a day.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, people don't believe anybody regardless of sex. It happens to both genders. It's not, or both genders and sexes. It's not a. It's weird that I've got to make that genders and sexes. No. Yeah, it happens to everybody. Everybody at some point or another is not believed. It's not a thing that only happens to women. So there's a lot of things in here that I'm just like, all of this is just sickening. It's based on the feminist ideology that what's her...
The problem I see with this, and it is kind of part of millennial culture, is that it is a lack of responsibility. So someone who does take responsibility and has failures in life isn't sitting blaming all women for their failures. They're blaming either their lack of initiative or the areas they messed up or made bad choices, and will attempt to correct it to make better choices going forward. When you have this mentality, what incentive do you have to make your life better? You're just blaming your failures on society or on these stereotypes or perceived inhibition, or not inhibitions, but restrictions.
All right, well, I had this
rather than saying I could have done better, you're saying it just simply would have been better except for you. Right. Because I was born a woman, I have no chance of being somebody amazing.
All right.
It's a horrible. Okay, but yeah.
So it is almost 10 o'clock. I was like, oh, okay, so this is the exchange that got me permanently banned. Okay. She relies on shaking her ass because her songwriting and music playing disappeared after her 1989 album. She's never been a top tier vocalist. Like that's what I was like. Vocals alone, nah, she wouldn't even pass on The Voice. I'm sorry. Like she is a very good singer. She is not. Like, singing talent alone would not deserve the...
Yeah, like a difference between her and Beyonce.
Yeah, like... No, she is not vocalist Beyonce. She's not Adele. She is a good vocalist. She's not an Aretha Franklin. She's not going to be remembered for all time for her vocals. She's going to be remembered for her songwriting, for her albums, for, you know... But yeah, Like, yeah, so, but repeating "Look What You Made Me Do" in a monotone, sing-songy way wouldn't work for any artist not shaking their tits. That's, I was like, yeah, that's, yeah, you can disagree with me on that. That is an opinion, but I think it's, seems pretty accurate to me because, Look What You Made Me Do is such a bad song, too. Same kind of thing as I'm not responsible for this. You pushed me into like a lot of I could break down a lot of her newer songs and point out like it's like what happened like yeah. There's always been the kind of I'm a victim-ish throughout her career, but there's always been that counter to like okay I'm gonna overcome this. I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna grow up. But most of her newer stuff is not along those same lines. And granted, there are lyrics in "Look What You Made Me Do" that kind of paint that picture. But it's like, but the main hook, it's not a hook. It's just repeating that boring line. The main chorus of that song, if you could call it a chorus, is just repeating "Look What You Made Me Do," and that's the theme of the song. It's not getting over or becoming stronger. It's this is all your fault, and you wronged me, and I didn't do anything. And it's like, no, nope. There was shots fired on both sides, from what I can tell. Anyway, so this person I got into this discussion with, this Swiftie account or whatever is. So have you heard the entirety of Reputation and Lover? Yes, I have. That's what I responded with. If she wants to shake her ass, she can. And I didn't say she couldn't shake her ass. I was commenting on the quality of her albums and how they've gone down, and I think the only reason that she's maintained her success is because she's hot. Like if she was someone who was less attractive and wasn't out there shaking her butt in front of stadiums full of people, and she was putting out this mediocre music, let's see, I'm trying to come up with a good example of because I know artists have done it. I mean, there's female artists who have just disappeared because, well, what was her name? What was that other coffee shop type? She played the guitar. I'm trying to think of a name. Well, okay, maybe I should just go. So someone like Mandy Moore, although I'm not sure if Mandy Moore is actually making music or anything like that.
I think she's more into like acting.
Yeah.
I mean, she's singing that Tangled.
Yeah. No, it's not Vanessa Carlton. Who's the other one that makes like kind of smooth jazz-ish songs? Not Colby Calais. I can't remember the name. I don't know. I just think of her songs and I think of coffee shops. Like the.
Did she sing that Unwritten song?
No, she's the Unwritten lady does kind of more pop stuff and dances and stuff like. The song lyric is "Don't know why I didn't call," but kind of like mellow, smooth jazz-ish.
Jewel?
Oh yeah, okay. So Jewel would kind of be an example. Well, did Jewel ever drop off? I don't know. I mean, she disappeared, but she didn't quite start making songs nobody cared about. That's what So I'm trying to. There are examples of somebody who started off with a style or whatever, and then eventually their songs just kind of went to meh, and then nobody cared anymore. Now, Miley Cyrus is not a good example, but I'm trying to. I know. Not Vanessa Carlton, but that's the only name that pops in my head. But someone there are female artists who have like a hit, and then they start to make success, and then they start to pump out garbage music, and because they're used to just playing small songs or whatever, and then when they get that fame and they're putting out garbage music, and then they don't do the song and dance routine like Taylor Swift has transitioned into, and they just disappear. I'm trying to. It was a good example, but I can't remember the name. Well, I mean, maybe that's not a good example because she's stuck with the mellow, but her song is just kind of like first album is really good and really listenable, and then the quality of it just kind of disappears over time. I can't think of the name though. Anyway, I guess that's a huge side tangent. My bad. So yes, I have heard both, and both of those albums are boring and terrible. Like there's very little redeeming on them. Like there's very little that is memorable from either of those albums. Like the only song that is memorable from Lover is the one that she did with Brandon Urie. I think it's a very blah song, but it is somewhat catchy. Like the lyrics in it are very mind-numbingly dumb and dull, but the song overall is kind of catchy. You can't.
I don't remember that.
That's the one with "You can't spell awesome without me. Spelling is fun." No, it's
just called Me.
Yeah, it's called Me. Like the music video is entertaining, but the lyrics is just It is, but and I don't know if that song, like I think the song is salvaged because it's Brandon Urie and her singing, and it works as a song, but the lyrics are just awful. And everything else off of Lover is just bad. There's no real catchy lines. There's no real like, ooh, that was clever. There's like, at least there was clever stuff in her older stuff. Nothing stuck out to me as like, ooh, that was catchy. That was smart. That was well played. Like, Red is full of stuff that's like, ooh, that was good. That was really good. The Red album, I think, was when she had the most just kind of like, ooh, oh, that was clever. At least for me. Anyway. Okay. So she can shake her ass, but so can strippers. What's supposed to set her above is her songwriting, playing, and singing, and she has been doing all three mediocrely ever since she went full feminist girl power men are trash perma-victim. Yeah, I'm being hyperbolic, but that's she hasn't gone full blown that, but yeah, that's where she's heading. Granted, she's having an issue with some guy who sold her records or her master or the rights to her masters without asking her, and then she's like, "Yep, that's men are trash and men is toxic masculinity," and I'm like, no, that's one asshole who happens to have a penis. That's okay. That is not. Well, the other side to that is you signed the contracts. You don't like, oh, well, I agreed to this. I agreed to sell the rights to my masters. I mean, wow, that sounds pretty bad now. It's like the master copies of her records were in possession of some other company. The Big Machine owned the rights to the master copies of her albums, and Big Machine sold it off to some other guy. And she's like, oh, but they didn't even ask me they didn't even give me the chance to. And I was like, well, that's what happens when you sign a contract and you say somebody else owns them. You don't get a say in what happens to them because somebody else owns them. And yeah, the saying that it's all men, like, oh yeah, this is proof of toxic masculinity. I don't know if you're reading the tweet. So, and that's entirely my criticism. You all care more. Oh, let's see. Oh, I forgot something she said here. So, if she wants to shake her ass, she can. But even if she didn't, that video and song still would have broken records because the rest of us actually cared more for what she's standing for than her dancing. And I was like, yeah.
With an A.
Sorry, what?
I think that should have an A.
What should have an A?
Right? Wouldn't it be Than Her Dancing? THAN? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Continue on.
Oh, yeah. It's then is, yeah, and grammatically incorrect. It should be than. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, but actually cared more for what she is standing for than her dancing. And that's it's like, yeah, that's entirely my criticism. Way to acknowledge that this thing that I'm saying is bad is a thing. You care more about what she represents than doing her music, singing, etc. You don't care about her skills or development. You just care that she pushes your idiotic ideology.
But something that I would put in opposition to that. Yeah. Now, you're talking about Taylor Swift specifically.
Yes.
However, there are bands who do that, and that is part of what people do appreciate, like Rage Against the Machine. Every song.
Yeah, their entire album, yes, they have a political ideology. Yeah.
And I didn't agree with all of it, but they also just, man.
Well, yeah.
Umbrella makes catchy licks.
Yes. Yeah,
it's simple, it hits you right in the face as soon as it starts.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that careers can be built off of.
So even though they had an ideology, their music stands on its own, which is why even when that band switched over and got a new singer and turned into Audioslave, right? Was it Audioslave or were they become Velvet Revolver?
Audioslave. Velvet Revolver was something else. That was
that was Guns N' Roses. Okay. Yeah, two bands that used to have that were good good musicians who played awesome songs and had shit singers. Well, maybe not. Rage Against the Machine did not have a shit singer. He just conflicted with the band, and then the band left, and they got a new lead singer. They completely changed the style, but made awesome music. So that ideology was not necessary for their music to be good. The musicians in Rage Against the Machine are good musicians. And they proved that by switching to a new singer, having a completely different style, and still producing songs that are very, very catchy. Other female artists succeed on merit, not ideology. Adele is one of those that I've said, she doesn't, even though she started talking about feminists and she's going to raise her son as a feminist or something like that, her music doesn't come through as pushing it's not ham-fisted. Like that's my biggest problem with these Taylor Swift songs is they're ham-fisted.
It's not like a slight nod or a suggestion that, hey, this needs to be fixed. It is on the nose, right in your face. Men are garbage, and if I was a man, I would be able to do all the same thing that these garbage men are doing.
Yeah,
because I'm restricted, but that's not the case in her career at all.
Yeah.
So I think it's more along the lines of they can have ideologies and they can base their singing off ideologies, but it still has to fit the person, the venue, what it's coming out of.
Okay. All right. So I said she's slipping into mediocrity, but this woman responds, "That's your opinion. Most of us actually enjoy her mediocre music, and most critics disagree with it." And I was like, "But you just said it wasn't about that. It was about what she was standing for." It's like, you just fucking said the opposite of that a tweet ago. Do you not look to see what tweet you're replying to? Do you even read a single tweet out of context, or do you just read a single tweet out of context in a thread and reply to what while ignoring everything before it? Because this is a response. It's like, this one right here, she's just admitting it's care for what she is standing for. She just said that, and I'm like, so the response here is, firstly, don't swear when talking to me. All my responses have been respectful. Not so much, but all right. Don't swear when talking to me, as if that's the line that pushed me to getting banned, because my response to that is what actually got me banned here. I don't know if you see this. So Let's see. Secondly, blah blah blah. I guess maybe that's not. So if you can't tell right here, I'm gonna say this. Yeah, it's whatever. YouTube. I think I've cussed on this before, but shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, tits. That is a reference to George Carlin. Those are the 7 words you cannot say on TV. I said them solely because this woman told me I could not swear at her. That's the tweet that got me banned. What? That tweet. And I've got... So I'm not just stating that. So I don't think you'll be able to see this, but here's the email I got from Twitter. It says, "Hello, HUMANE Mind. Your account, HUMANE_Mind, has been suspended for violating Twitter rules. Specifically for violating our rules against hateful conduct. You may not promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease." Now, what the fuck in that tweet is hateful or harassing any of those? So, yeah. Your responses haven't been respectful, as you've ignored my arguments to attack things I never said, and now you are opening lying as if I cannot scroll up and read verbatim you stating exactly what you now claim you didn't. This tweet was reported, and Twitter was like, "Yep, that violates our hateful conduct." That's it. Because I quoted George Carlin to someone who told me I could not cuss. I'm not allowed to curse. I'm not allowed to swear on Twitter. So, yeah. I mean, granted, not a smart thing to do, but not something that should have gotten me kicked off of Twitter based on Twitter's terms of services. So here is their hateful conduct policy. You may not promote violence against or directly attack or threaten any other people on the basis of race, blah, 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 blah. I just basically said that and the other thing. We do not allow accounts whose primary purpose is inciting harm towards other on the basis of these categories. Yet Antifa still has a account, and they do promote harm against people for being white.
Well, ultimately,
for religion.
That was probably a bit overboard and an inappropriate response. I know you quote George Carlin. I don't think they actually meant you can't cuss. It's please don't. I haven't. I think the only curse word they used was
no. They so okay.
Their ass.
Yeah. Wait. Let me go back to that.
That being said, you didn't. It doesn't look like you broke any sort of.
So this tweet, "First, don't swear while talking to me," ends the tweet with "Now fuck off."
Oh, okay. I didn't see that last part.
So, don't swear when talking to me. Now fuck off. That sounds like sounds
hypocritical.
That's like, yeah, it's hypocritical, but I think it's done on purpose to kind of be funny, which I think that's a good joke. Responding with George Carlin should be an equivalent response.
Okay, so I didn't see that part where. I guess it makes a little more sense. But, yeah, I don't see anything that would... So, you're not advocating violence against anybody, just...
No.
That...
I'm not harassing anybody. I'm not advocating violence against anybody. I just
Maybe
copied
they took
and pasted these words.
Whoever you're speaking to, you sounded hateful, and if they are of opposite gender, it is now covered under that. Wait, are they of opposite gender? I don't know. I don't know what that username is.
The username is Mix206, but the image is of Taylor Swift, so I have no idea.
Yeah, well then
This is a Taylor Swift fan account or something like that, but it's but the terms of service. So I could understand somebody reporting me for violating terms of service, and then Twitter's automated system being like, "Oh, sorry, you're banned," and then me having to appeal that. But Twitter denied the appeal based on this hateful conduct policy, and I'm looking over this and I'm like, where is there a violation of anything in here? When this applies, violent threats. No violent threats were made. Wishing, hoping, or calling for serious harm on a person or group of people. Didn't happen. Reference to mass murder, violent events, or specific means of violence. Nope. Nothing like that. Inciting fear about a protected category. Nope. Nothing in this thread.
So it would seem that somebody got offended because you used a bunch of profanity.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Okay. So
Well, unless
repeated.
they have a policy that says profanity is prohibited, which would get a lot of people banned.
Yeah. Repeated or non-consensual slurs, epithets, racist or sexist tropes, or other content that degrades someone. That's the only thing that I can see that might be stretched to this.
Maybe it was just a C word?
No, that shouldn't be against Twitter rules. Otherwise, there would be a lot of people banned. Yeah.
I don't know.
So, we prohibit targeted individuals with repeated slurs, tropes, or other content tended to dehumanize, degrade, or reinforce negative.
That's also stupid. Why Nazi swastikas? Because what if you're simply discussing like the origin of the swastika and that it came from what, Hindu religion?
Yeah, it's a symbol in a lot of different religions. It's not so it's Hindu. There's also Greek symbol.
Kind of complicated that.
Yeah, and what? Yeah, so this is stupid, but
yeah. I don't know. Ultimately, it seems like silly conversation.
Yeah, silly conversation. I thought it was kind of in good fun. They did not, apparently, and that's like, I mean, it's not like I wasn't trolling or joking. I was like, yeah, this is how I legitimately think. And then when it got to that point, I thought, this person is messing with me. They just told me not to swear at them, then told me to fuck off. Okay, the appropriate response is like, okay, don't swear at you. Here's the 7 swear words that I'm not, well, even some, those are not even swear words. Those are just the 7 words that you're not supposed to say on TV. There's a lot more swear words than just that, but I was like, yeah, I'll just respond with that. And I didn't say that about, I just listed those words, and I didn't, there's, within the context, to me it made sense, but that's apparently what Twitter decided was grounds to permanently ban my account. What a shitty platform.
Yeah.
Alright. So it is now 10 o'clock, and that is all the list of things I wanted to say. We did not even, nope, did not get to the Communist Manifesto. Hopefully we can wrap that up next Monday, and let's see, next Monday we'll try to see if we can get the last of it out before the end of the year, and we can get the Communist Manifesto done and over with, and then we can start talking about other stuff. But I mean, that is something like I've been enjoying talking about, but it seems like, I thought maybe we'd spend like 2 or 3 of these on it, and it's been like 6.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. It's a very condensed ideology into that pamphlet.
All right, but I have to pee like a racehorse, and I covered everything, so I think we're gonna go ahead and call it a stream. I'm showing 1 concurrent view, but that's probably.
Oh, that's me. I was just seeing if anybody commented because we missed that last time, but I haven't seen anybody pop up.
Yeah, because I do not pay attention to the live chat. Yep. All right. So that's that's the stream, and I don't know what I'm going to do if I want to go and argue with somebody. Where do I go? So the past couple of days, I'm like, got my phone, and most of the time when I'm like walking to lunch or to the bathroom, whatever, I'll pop open Twitter and just kind of respond to something. Now I don't know what to do with my phone. It's like, this thing's a piece of junk. There's nothing on there. And it's now that I don't have it anymore, I'm realizing how much I was on Twitter, and so I think ultimately this is a good thing that I'm no longer allowed access to that, because I was on there way too much.
Could be. I don't know.
Arguing with morons over stupid stuff, but I thought it was fun. Fun while it lasted. The only downside to that is it was a good source of information, because I would find out about these news stories as they were happening instead of waiting for other channels to kind of respond to them and chime in. Because usually the news would break first on Twitter, and then other platforms will get the news, and then now I've got to get, I've got to wait till Fox writes an article on it, or or CNN comes out with a video or something. So Twitter is, for the most part, where things happen. Like, and most of the stuff Andy No does, the first place he posts them on is Twitter as well. So so I'm gonna have to be delayed on getting access to stuff, but I will still find out about it eventually through other means. But I still did not violate this policy. Anything that's written in here
Doesn't look like it. They have nothing preventing the use of profanity. They just, I guess they are assuming hateful intent towards the person you're responding to, but even then, none of intent is covered under any of this.
Yeah.
Even if you're angry with somebody.
This is the closest thing. Intends to dehumanize, degrade, or reinforce negative, harmful stereotypes about a protected category. And I'm like, well, because they got that about a protected category, this doesn't fall under that. So,
well, there would also have to be a stereotype of what you're either reinforcing or
reading through it. This was the closest I could see as them, but they'd have to stretch this pretty broadly in order to fit my tweet in that thread. I'm like, but it's the last thing I'll say is this kind of this lie that people like Taylor Swift have been led to believe, is that for some reason they think men have it easy and men do not. Both. Everybody has a hard life. Everybody has struggles. Not everybody's struggles are the same, but nobody's life is struggle free, which is kind of the mentality that these feminists paint, is like, oh, well, men don't have to deal with any of these problems. They've never had these struggles. They've never, like, yeah, well, then why do men commit suicide at like 4 times the rate of women? Why are 3 out of 4 homeless people men? Because men apparently never struggle. It is
I saw
bizarre.
A news article about that, and it was trying to promote feminism, and they were like, 1 out of every 4 homeless people is a woman. Just what?
Yeah, that's how they spin it, and you're like, that means there's 3 guys that are homeless. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. For every 1 homeless woman, there are 3 homeless men.
Wouldn't it be better?
So the question is do they want more women to be homeless to match that, or do they want less men to be homeless to match until they get that 50-50 ratio?
I think they were wanting it to where there's no such thing as a homeless woman. It's just men.
Oh, so they want 100% men.
Yep.
That makes sense. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks to anybody who did join and follow, and anybody who ends up coming along this after the fact. And what a crazy couple of weeks. I will try to stream on the 30th, and let's see, is there any other holidays coming up? Yeah, so the 30th and the 6th should be fine, and we'll just keep going. Yeah, Mondays from there. All right, and thanks for joining me, bro, and I'm gonna go ahead and end this so I can go take a leak.
Mm-hmm.
All right, see you next Monday.